It all kicked off at the royal court the day King's 17th prince, Hel, hit 15, because on his birthday, Hel finally crossed into adulthood, and the king celebrated by handing him his very own dominion. Hel didn't feel great at all, because the place they handed him was supposed to be a total wreck, and now he had to fix it all himself. And just like that, they shoved him onto a boat and hauled him to the island. Only when he finally saw land, his hope shattered. The gift he got turned out to be Shield Reef, nothing but crummy reefs. From the capital to this nowhere place took him a brutal 15 days at sea, and it was so remote even pirates wouldn't risk it, left alone, ignored, and forgotten. Right after he got dropped near the island, the escorts who came with him spun around and bolted. No checks, no questions, didn't even bother to see if he could land safely. Either way, this was his turf, and he couldn't even tell where he was meant to touch down, because this big rock had already become the 17th prince's territory in the kingdom of Sanphalis. When he finally got the Sheol Reef, his own siblings laughed in his face and mocked him nonstop, because his abilities already made life miserable, and the worst part was he didn't even have a real crest to call his own. Every kid was born with a crest, and his brothers didn't just have them, they had legendary ones that unleashed terrifyingly strong powers. The crest on his body was a total mystery. No one had the faintest clue what it actually meant. He threw himself at every idea to see if his crest would finally react, but nothing happened, and that silence slammed shame straight onto their family. Earlier, he'd already tried to corner his father and beg for even a single representative, but the king clung to his words like they were law, refused to bend them for the request, and he somehow knew he'd just been cast out, exiled in all but name. Or tossed out to a barren mountain of rocks. His mind spiraled into nightmares like, they'll execute me for trees, this would have been better. Even as one truth kept slamming into him, he refused to die. He spotted a smaller cluster of rocks and went for it, steering hard to land there without wrecking his boat. He blasted it open with wind magic for them. But his magic was so pathetic it couldn't even budge a single feather. Against all odds, he slammed down hard without breaking anything, hauled his supplies out of the boat, and then made a beeline to stash them somewhere safe first. And in the distance, he spotted a cave and hauled all his supplies toward it. And what he saw there was pure nightmare fuel, horrific beyond words. He spotted dozens of dead skeletons scattered everywhere, proof that people who washed up on this island never made it out alive. Panic crawled up his spine, but he had no choice. He had to grit his teeth and make it work. He shoved the supplies inside anyway, then stared out at the ocean with pure hopelessness burning in his eyes. He stared at the place, struck by its beauty, safe from the capital's chaos, but deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that things needed to be different. He slapped his own face to jolt himself fully awake, and he vowed he'd make it out of this alive, no matter the cost. He figured out his move. First, beg help from a passing ship, but only if they weren't from his own country. Still, his choices were razor-thin because everyone avoided the reef, and there were no safe routes around here at all. Plus, he had even more surviving problems breathing down his neck. The food and water he'd packed would only carry him for about a month, so he couldn't bet on magic. He had to start saving his life the hard way, catch and store rainwater in barrels and go fish. He chose to clean the cave first, then dug the scattered bones into the ground because they were an eyesore. He grabbed his pickaxe and started digging right away. Then he heard it, the voice of the mining tool he'd just acquired. He couldn't shake the feeling. What kind of voice was that, sliding straight into his mind like it owned the place? He caught the voice again, and this time he didn't waste a second. He demanded to know what it was. The voice didn't come from him at all. It belonged to his crest, the Cave King, and that advisor feature locked the crest so it couldn't talk to him. This was the day he learned his birth crest wasn't just any mark. It was the Cave King's, and somehow it chose now, and he couldn't shake the feeling it was timing aimed right at him. He finally got it. Maybe it was because he'd never once stepped into a cave, or the mines right there in the royal capital. After that, the crest didn't just help him. It supercharged his mining skills and even buffed his supports, so he could climb the ranks inside the cave. All that information hit him like a freight train, so he snapped into action and started mining. The crest kicked in, and right before his eyes, the cave lit up in sharp, glowing bursts. The gleaming white parts were the perfect spots to dig out ore, and they planned it perfectly for him, so not one cave fall or break would happen. He took a swing and nailed one of those shiny spots right in front, and a brutal impact slammed into his face. He stared in disbelief. His mining was blasting through everything, and that was all thanks to his crest, which even fed him night vision support so he could work without missing a thing. He could mine in peace, so he struck first, building a room to sleep in for himself, and kept mining with pure grit, refusing to stop until time ran on. Before he knew it, he was actually enjoying every second of it. He shoved deeper into the cave, mining a few more meters before the darkness could swallow him. He suddenly realized that every step deeper into the cave made his mining rate and strength surge, and it all clicked because leveling up those matching skills boosted how much he could dig. Then the crest advisor leaned in and asked, "You want to go grab the 168 rocks you've dug up so far?" He couldn't help wondering where those retrieved rocks would end up. Then the crest answered him loud and clear. They'd be locked away inside the crest itself. He just kept digging deeper and deeper, like there was no end in sight, until he finally noticed it was a nightmare to mine, with all those rocks piled around him. He snatched the rocks right up, and they instantly dropped into his inventory like they were straight out of Minecraft. The crest pushed the automatic retrieval option right in his corner to back him up. And then it hit him, at this pace, he just might reach the other side, so he yanked his way down and started digging straight downward. Digging a little deeper, the crest finally told him he was now 10 meters beneath where he started, but he still couldn't wrap his head around what meters even meant. And he took a breather just long enough to check his inventory. He couldn't believe it, one round of mining and he'd struck copper, bronze, and even gold ore, even if he figured gold was probably useless out here on a deserted island. Then another rock snared his attention, a magic stone, and he had no clue what it could do, while the crest hummed with answers about the rocks. So it all hit him at once. The magic stone could supercharge the user's power, and the bigger the stone, the more his magic surged. Right after that, the next stone that grabbed his attention was the turtle stone. That could squeeze an extra day of life out of a person. Finding something that could even boost his lifespan felt like a miracle, and he couldn't stop thanking the heavens for this incredible crest, because all his old bad opinions about the Sheol Reef flipped into pure awe the moment he truly understood just how insane this domain was. He got so locked in on mining that he totally forgot to keep watch for ships that could get him out. Right after that, he pushed about 30 meters deeper into the cave, and boom, his inventory flooded with rocks and ores. Among all those stones, the two that hooked his curiosity the hardest were the magic stone and the turtle stone, because if he could get his hands on them, he could level up his magic fast, and that's exactly what he was thinking. He burned every last one of his 90 magic stones right after he used them. He expected a huge change, but after using them, nothing felt different at all, just pure crushing confusion. So he went right for it. He cleared the trail back from where he'd been digging to test it on the spot. He fired off wind magic, and the cave instantly got swallowed by a roaring blast of air. And he mowed through the rubble, bones, and broken stones, blasting it all with brute force out of the cave and into the outside world. He stared in disbelief, because that power he just unleashed was his. He still couldn't wrap his head around it. Just 90 magic stones had him this powered up. Right after that, a slime got drawn to his magic like it was magnetized. It swept right up to him, and the slime didn't even feel hostile. It acted like it genuinely liked Heel, leaving him staring like, "Wait, what are you?" After 3 days like that, he finally started to feel like this wild new life was his home. He kicked off his day by double-checking every tool and ration, getting himself ready for the same hard digging that always came next. He hooked up with the slime he'd met 3 days earlier, kept it by his side, and christened it Shell. 3 days ago, a slime showed up at his doorstep, and that's when he finally remembered exactly what slimes were. Then the crest lit up and told him he could tame the slime, and that taming monsters would make them follow his command, but it only worked on ones he could break and control, not the hostile monsters, and those tameable beasts were still hunted and hated by the kingdom he'd once lived in. But inside this cave, nobody was there to judge a single move he made. And he finally tamed that slime, then crowned him with the name **Shell***. He felt pure relief knowing he wasn't alone anymore, like Shell just couldn't possibly understand him, and then, somehow, everything shocked him. Shell could, somehow, she finally got what he was feeling, just a little. It even started backing Heel in his mining hustle, becoming his rock-solid support. He said Shell was way smarter than anyone expected, and that's how he finally managed to reach places no one could before. He started throwing hand signals to Shell, telling it exactly what he wanted it to shape next, and that small push sent his progress skyrocketing, even faster than before, up to 3 times as fast. With his progress skyrocketing, he slammed 500 magic stones straight into himself. Now that his magic was fully powered up, he finally didn't have to worry about food ever again. And at night, Shell turned into the perfect pillow, always the exact shape he had in mind. While he kept mining, he stumbled on about 10 more slimes, and once he flashed that special shell, they instantly became way easier to communicate with than the others. As long as they didn't mess with his mining, it was fine. while he dozed off, he couldn't stop thinking about what he'd uncover tomorrow. And next morning, she jolted him awake like she was desperate to start something. Tell him something by bouncing around like you're totally out of your mind. Shell sure looked like she was hiding something, and that confused him. And then he clocked the exact way Shell was trying to steer him. He spotted someone, and without a second to waste, he bolted straight over. Only to spot three creatures sliding straight toward his island, green goblins, and the next thing he knew, their boat had smashed into the rocks. He hesitated hard because he feared they might turn out to be a real danger for him. And that's why most humans used to slaughter goblins on sight, but Shell still wanted him to stay, help them, and fight back. And he realized deep down that if he just walked away and left them to die here, he'd never feel right about it. He fired off a recovery spell, then hauled them to a much safer place. Then he bolted right away and left them tucked safely in place. As soon as their lives were safe, he bolted back into the cave. He ordered Shell to keep him posted on any change in their condition, then left him there to stand guard. He knew if he got careless with the goblins, they'd snap and attack without warning. He told himself he'd be fine even if things went wrong, and with his magic power stronger now, he was still a little on edge. He gritted his teeth, forced his rage down, and went right back to mining. He started digging, mining like it was pure joy, and the whole thing grabbed him so hard it turned into a real hobby, until he forgot everything else. And just like that, he tore through his inventory, hunting for anything new. This time he stumbled on two fresh stones. One was a shining stone that never dulls, and the other was the Musogi stone, strong enough to rip curses off anyone like it was nothing. He figured they wouldn't matter much, because he already had night vision, and in this dead quiet place, he couldn't imagine anyone even bothering to curse him. He decided to keep digging with stubborn fury, and after a while, Shell raced over to him and shouted that the goblins were already up and stirring. He crept in to see what the goblins were up to, then dove into hiding the second he heard them. So for safety, he decided to sneak in and overhear their talk, while one of them kept eyeing Heel's food, and someone else snapped at him to stop, but the general goblin. El clocked Heel standing there and instantly snapped into full guard. The princess goblin snapped at El to drop his weapon, insisting Heel had saved them, but El wouldn't budge, because in his eyes Heel was still pure danger. Heel couldn't believe it when he realized they spoke the same language, and that shocking detail made him suspect the goblins might have come from his very same continent. He told them he wasn't trying to hurt them at all, but El refused to trust a human that easily. El said he was probably cooking up something, because the look on Heel's face screamed it. Then Heel just stared, completely baffled by what he'd heard. Then Shell twisted into a perfect mirror, and when Heel caught his reflection in it, he couldn't believe how terrifying he looked right now. He was radiating pure danger, like he'd snapped the world in half. And as he kept mining every single day, he suddenly realized he was changing into something else. So he snapped his face into place, told El they could dig into his food, and laughed that he could always mine up more. He showed off how wind magic could haul in even more fish, sweeping them right out of the water. El stared in disbelief at just how brutally strong he was, then demanded, "If you're that powerful, why didn't you just kill them?" Princess Goblin tried again to force El to finally get it. But she couldn't hold herself up anymore and crumpled to the ground, so everyone panicked, because their princess wasn't okay. And he'll press her like, "So you're still not healed yet." The elder goblin leaned in and flat out told him, "No, that's not how it is." And then Rai got hit with a life-shrinking curse, straight up cursed to lose his lifespan. They collapsed into despair as their princess hit her limit and began weeping with heartbreak. Hill saw disaster closing in, and he yanked Vari and El back before she could sacrifice them all, along with her own life. He told them he could cure her, and El snapped back in pure rage, saying they'd already tried everything. Then he grabbed the Misogi stone he'd found earlier and smashed it down on Rai. After that, because her life was already cut short too, he slammed 79 turtle stones into her. They couldn't stop asking, where in the world did he get those rare stones? But the only thing that truly mattered, their princess Rai came back to life, stronger and better than ever. Rai was stunned out of her mind because she swore Rai had died. El realized Heel wasn't a bad guy at all, and because he'd just saved the princess, El dropped to the ground, bowed in apology, and left the dirt cracked under him. He'll ask if they want to join him and grab something to eat while they're introducing themselves, and he can't help but stare. El is insanely strong, just like when he'd smashed the stone floor with his head earlier. Yeah, these goblins are definitely terrifying. They sat down together, and El blurted out an apology for everything, then leaned in and introduced himself as General El of the Belden tribe, while El's name hit the air again as she followed with her own. She was Rodden's daughter, the king of the Belden tribe. Before the moment even cooled, the elder goblin Vari stepped forward and announced he was the Belden tribe's shaman. Right after they met, he stepped forward and introduced himself as the prince of the kingdom of Sandfullies, then revealed that he used to be. Eli thought he could use every spell he'd seen before, because maybe he'd be strong enough like the prince. Then he turned it down and explained it was all thanks to the magic stones he dug up. Hild leaned in and demanded to know why they were even here on this island. El leaned in and spilled everything, how their hometown got torched by the orcs. Their royal bloodline was nearly wiped out, and only Princess Reese survived. Now, for a whole year, they've been hunting for a new home. They begged clan after clan, but nobody would take them in, while humans kept driving them off. So they grabbed the survivors and charged toward the new world, praying it was the one place that wouldn't hunt them down. But suddenly disaster hit, their ship got wrecked, and panic surged as they couldn't even tell whether anyone else was still safe. Princess Rai snapped at Very not to carry that blame, because whether they stayed on land or not, their fate was always circling back to the same nightmare. She thanked Heel because without him, monsters like them wouldn't have survived. Peel reassured them it was fine, but deep down he hated that they had to hear all of it. She admitted she wouldn't have long to live, but when the crushing pain in her chest finally vanished, she exhaled in relief, ready to die in peace. Heel told her it was way too soon to quit. He told her that tons of turtle stones were buried and sleeping underground, and that if they used them, they could stretch her life as long as they wanted. He promised them, if I keep digging for a week, I might earn enough to buy her over a year more life. El said it was too much to ask of him, then offered to help too by digging right alongside you. Heel reassured him, saying everything was totally fine. Ellen Rin grabbed his hands, thanking him for tearing her out of death's grip, then she demanded to know why he'd hand her something that precious. He told her, don't worry, I'm digging for fun, and the moment he said it, his face lit up, because having her here with him now made him genuinely happy. Now tears hit her hard, because she finally realized she could actually live more. Because getting pulled back from death would feel totally natural to any survivor. Hyle brushed it off like it was nothing, then glanced at her and asked himself, all right, what do I do next? He already had plenty of ice axes, but the crest told him he could handle the spots where the digging would happen, and even slice parts of his powers into the monsters he'd tame. Then he leaned in and asked, wanna be tamed by me, and told them it was so they could dig alongside him. Then he made it crystal clear, they could choose freely because he'd hand over turtle stones either way. They snapped up the offer with gratitude and jumped in beside him, letting his tamed monsters follow them into the next chaos. We locked in and promised we'd serve him. She couldn't stand the idea of sitting back while everyone else worked. She wanted to step in and help them, and she also had to repay the debt she owed him. Then he got locked in, firing up name ideas one after another. First he dubbed El as Elvin. And Vari headed straight to Varys. And Riene read everything for him. She loved their new names, and they swore they'd give him everything from here on out. Then he pulled out the glowing stone and crafted torches for everyone, because the rest of them couldn't see in the dark like he could. They spotted the bright spots right away. Those were the real treasure targets, and he showed them exactly how to dig and mine from here on out. He slammed into the wall ahead of him, and it shattered completely, piece by piece. He told them, you'll be able to dig like this, just wait, then made it clear he didn't start that way either. Next, the real problem hit. He had to gather the rocks himself because the others didn't have the automatic retrieve skill, so he turned to Shell and ordered her to teach the other slimes exactly how to collect the rocks and ores. He swore that the grind would forge perfection in you. From that day on, they all threw themselves into the work side by side, and that cave he'd been digging suddenly roared to life with teamwork. Then Heel got pulled straight back into the past, reliving another gut-punching tragedy from all those unbearable moments he'd lived through. When everyone targeted him for being weak and started bullying him without mercy. He fought to protect a monster while bullies dragged it down, tied it up, and tortured it. Something was lodged in his neck, and it lit up his mind with memories of that incident. After all that digging, Elvin leaned in and asked if he was wiped out, and Rihanna followed right up, checking if he was okay. He heard Rihanna playing, then told them, I'm just sorting through some thoughts. I can't be tired from digging when my cave king crest is right here. She urged him, don't burn yourself out, and he promised he wouldn't. Then he caught the scent of something so good it made his stomach drop. And it turns out it was the sweet smell of apple pie, whipped up by Rihanna for everyone, and the crowd lit up because they finally got something new to chow down. It's been 3 days since he ran into those goblins, and in all that time, they've already been busy cooking up brand new stuff. Like a bathroom reservoir, ready to overflow. And there was this simple little kitchen, and yeah, that's exactly why it all worked out. He could chow down on Rihanna's cooking no matter what she whipped up. It was so ridiculously good, it didn't even matter what the dish was. Every bite was pure perfection. She was practically glowing with relief the moment she saw he loved it. And he couldn't help but smile, because Rihanna actually put his countryside gifts to good use. Sorry, Elvin had no idea mining could feel this exciting. And Varys and his allies lined up with the very same thoughts, ready to do whatever it took to stretch their princess's life. Life was finally letting up, and she looked them in the eye and thanked them for it. Day by day, things finally started to turn around, but they weren't done yet, because there was still a mountain of stuff waiting for them. He didn't have the supplies he needed yet, and all these worries piled up fast, like how they were finally starting to find food beyond just fish and getting better clothes, because their old stuff was slowly falling apart. He had basically no hope, until he gambled everything by blocking the incoming ship and spending his gems to stock up on supplies. But the biggest shock was this: he'd slowly started thinking with the weight of a real ruler, full of worries a lord of a country would carry. He decided to keep mining for now, chasing after more turtle stones for Rihanna, and swore he'd dig up something new before it was over. Soon as he mined, he stumbled into a hollow patch in the earth, and he rushed in to see what was hidden inside, only to find a pile of strange, out-of-place stones that looked nothing like normal rocks. They blazed a fiery orange like the sun sinking at night, and they looked nothing like the shining stones. And just after he kept moving a little farther, he clocked it the second he stepped in. This dirt was totally different. Right when he lifted his head, a monstrous spider towered in front of him. He froze and stared straight into the spider's eyes up close, terror hitting him hard as he wondered if it was about to swallow him right then. He snapped into action, unleashing magic to cut down the spider. But out of nowhere, the spider bolted, leaving him staring in shock. Once he finally saw the whole situation clearly, it turned out. Turns out the feared one was the spider all along, because it was fighting to protect its babies. I finally got it, and my guilt hit hard for scaring it like that. Then the crest blared the news: tameable monsters had been spotted. After a while, Elvin just waited, eyes locked on the doorway, waiting for Heel to come back. He jumped out of his skin when he saw his boss come back, spiders crawling right behind him. He'll storm over to apologize for startling him, then tell the others, "I just got the cave spiders to join my side." Varys' jaw dropped when he realized just how enormous those spiders really were. Varys told Heel that these spiders weren't just roughly his size. They spun silk tougher than iron, carried poison that could crush anyone, and had a terrifying reputation for hunting monsters, and even people. He finally realized the dirt piled behind that cave wasn't dirt at all. It was their waste, and Varys came in right after with the good news. The dirt from cave spiders could be packed up and used to grow crops, and that meant farming would get way easier for them. Right after that, Varys pressed for where they could farm in a place like this, and Heel snapped back that he had something to show them. He herded them to a tunnel and told them, "Look inside now." They were shocked to find a mountain of stairs just waiting for them, and it felt impossible, and demanded to know where they came from. Then he snapped back that he'd built them on his way back with Tara and the spider, since the path was too tight for her. He forged these stairs, widened the passage, and used brand new twists of his power as the Cave King. Now he could sculpt the mined area however he wanted, grind and fuse anything in his inventory, and even bolt on killer perks like night vision, enough to tame monsters too. Elvin and the others cheered this big step forward, feeling pumped to work even harder the next day. Then Hyle dropped the news. A welcome party for Taran and his kids was coming, so Ryan volunteered to grill mountains of fish, and Hyle even talked about how he'd remodel the whole island later and add more things to it. Elvin and Varys kept forging ice axes, and Varys promised he'd step in the moments they got stuck, because making iron tools in a place like this wasn't just progress, it was a massive leap forward for them. While Rihanna was on the hook to knit clothes using spider silk. Then he barked orders at them, dump the waste all in one spot. And just like that, he discovered something terrifying about Taran. Its speed was faster than anything he'd ever seen. Then he took the spot he'd filled with spider waste and planted an apple seed in it. And it shot up to full size in next to no time. Heel never saw it coming, then he realized why it was all so fast. Taran had grown so huge that it hit him. This wasn't some weird growth from leftover waste. It was the sunstones in that cave fueling the tree. He searched everywhere for those stones and came up empty, so he clutched them close, knowing he had to guard them with his life. He shouted for Rihanna, then bolted, leaving her holding the whole thing. She laid out the sunstones and the plantation plans, then shot him a sharp look, "Are you sure you want me on this?" and promised she wouldn't let him down. He trusted her with it then, using a riding shell to help. he pushed all the way back. Now that everyone's attention was locked on mining, he figured he could push even harder and mine even more himself. Right now, he was laser-focused on digging up more turtle stones, because Rihanna had already added 5 years to her life, yet he couldn't shake the worry. She was only 15 just like him, and he knew she probably wanted even more time. So he swung into mining mode and started hauling faster than anyone there, because he was the most efficient miner in the whole group. As he dug, he suddenly surfaced holding a bright white stone in his hand, and he scooped it up fast. That white stone was no treasure at all, it was a dragon orb, and when it glowed, it could drag someone back from death. He shouted for everyone and had them start digging right where he'd been. Even after digging there for ages, he still couldn't turn up a single extra dragon orb, and that's when it hit him. If he could resurrect as many people as he wanted with dragon stones, it'd be terrifying beyond belief. He chose to leave the stone out in the open, instead of stashing it in his inventory. Then he heard Elvin snapping his name, calling for him fast. He couldn't stop thinking about what could have happened. Then he shoved the dragon orb down in a safe spot and took off. And sprinted upstairs, then the stone came loose, came tumbling down and slammed into a corpse. Elvin told Heel, "I can see your comrades, ship charging straight at us." And he was certain it was them. He could feel it in his bones, and when he saw them, relief lit up their faces fast. All the goblins from their tribe were still alive, even Elvin's daughter. He then warned Elvin that docking here could be deadly, so he told him to swing his boat toward them instead. Turns out he feared the elves and the others would split off with their tribe, so he packed them off with a pile of sunstones, gifts meant to let them rebuild their home anywhere they wanted. Elvin stared at him, totally lost on what he was trying to say, and Hyle leaned in and told him, "Let's get out of here. This remote place is no good for us." He told them once we lock in a good place to settle down soon, we'll start trading with each other. Hearing that they were leaving him totally baffled them. Then Elvin roared for the command, right there at Heel, begging them not to ditch them like this. He made it crystal clear, they're not walking away, because they swore an oath to stay by his side forever, through everything, no matter what. Rian made it crystal clear, those guys were his subordinates. And once he felt that rush of relief, he still warned them, because this might be the only chance they ever get to leave like this. Then she leaned in and asked, "So if that's the plan, will you come with us?" He stared back at the mountain of rock and let the memories hit back when all he could think about was getting out of this place. But now everything felt different. Ryan finally realized what this place meant to him. And she made it crystal clear, she wouldn't budge either, not unless he came with her. Elvin and Varys were totally in sync, same opinions, no disagreements. It hit him like a gut punch, made his eyes burn. Then out of nowhere, the ocean's tides turned wild, swirling under the ship and dragging it down fast. Elvin's stomach dropped with worry, because most of the goblins on board couldn't swim a single stroke. They shot off right away on the boat to haul them back to safety. And when he spots them sprinting, he realizes there's a real chance they won't make it in time. And just like that, his worst memories slammed back into his mind, flashing across his eyes. For him, having no way to help anyone. But this time he was different. He sprinted straight for the cliff's edge without even thinking. He locked onto his goal and leapt straight off the cliff, eyes burning with purpose. He put his full faith in him, because this time, he had to believe he wasn't hopeless anymore. He dug his heels in, locked in his faith, and clung to the King of Cave crest like it was his lifeline. He slammed his freeze magic into the ocean. He froze the water itself around the sinking ship, locking it in place so it couldn't flip upside down. He couldn't believe it. After unleashing the power of over 8,000 magic stones, he was suddenly insanely strong. He cranked the ice to hold steady and shouted at Elvin and the others to sprint across it. Anyone who hesitated would have been lost. Elvin dove straight into the job, then his feet slid out from under him on the ice. Heel didn't see it coming. Then Taran surged in with Heel, and she hauled Heel across the ice on her back, because Heel suddenly understood the truth. Taran's injured leg might be the key to getting them out of this. Then the other spider kids of Taran sprinted in too, rushing to help them. Watching Elvin sink into sadness and realizing there was nothing he could do, he clenched his gratitude toward the spiders. Shell jumped in with Heel too, teaming up with the other slimes to push things forward. He tells everyone, "Jump in, save the drowned." While he held the ocean's waves back with his magic, the slimes, spiders. Elvin and the others teamed up, fought their way through, and when the rescue finally hit complete, not a single person was lost. Heel rushed in with healing magic and made sure everyone injured in the chaos got fixed up. Reen grabbed Heel with gratitude, thanking him for saving everyone, but they couldn't shake the feeling that they had no idea how to ever repay that debt. He told them he was finally satisfied, seeing that everyone was safe filled him with real joy. While Elvin was bawling after finally meeting his daughter Fu, after he'd spent years thinking she was gone, his joy burst so wide it barely fit in his chest because she was alive. And everyone else lit up, thrilled to witness that tearful reunion explode with emotion. Heel said he couldn't have pulled this off alone, and he was damn grateful to Spiders, Slimes, Reyna, the Elven crew, and Varys for helping him save the entire Belden tribe, because stuff like this was never something he could have done before. And seeing just how much everything had changed now, he couldn't do anything but thank them again and again for helping him level up into a better version of himself. After that, Varys pointed out a man lurking behind Heel, then demanded, "Who is he?" Out of nowhere, a strange man showed up, and everyone's plans just got shattered. He grilled Varys, asking if that mystery man could have been on the ship, and Varys shot back that there was nobody like him. Then the thought hit hard, what if he'd run into him in that cave? But nope, this time, the guy was completely naked. So he marched right up to him and tried to break through, forcing himself to communicate. But the man shrugged it off and strode away to catch up with the others and dig into the food. He was starving, and Rhiannon grinned. Then she decided to roast up even more fish for both of them. Helen Varys couldn't stop wondering who that man really was. The very next day, Heel was right in the thick of it, building rooms for every newcomer who had just washed up on the island. He'd already conquered everyone's attention and even started handing out names like a boss. And yeah, the situation wasn't exactly perfect, but watching his island slowly turn into something way more alive than before was still a win. But it also shoved this urgency straight into him, like he had to act now, to crank out more supplies and food for everyone. Rhiannon showed up to Heel, lined in, and dared him to taste the juice she just whipped up. The grape juice turned out insanely good because it was made from fresh grapes, straight from the vine. Rhiannon grew strong with sunstones and the grape seeds she unearthed from the boat. She told him the plantation was tiny for now, but give it a few years and it would overflow with fruits. Then he froze as years slipped out of Rhiannon's mouth. She'd never cared about the future before, but now she finally did, and that lit up his whole heart. He told her, "If you ever need anything, I've got you, just count on me." Then he heard other goblins screeching, because that strange, unknown man wasn't just walking around. He was wandering in place, staring at everyone like he owned the night. The goblin snapped at him to go somewhere else, because the stairs were making him feel awkward, and then the goblin called the man Mappa. And after that, everyone jumped on the bandwagon and started calling him Mappa for good. Mappa snatched up everything the goblin had made. Then I snapped them back like they were never worth a thing, and the goblin's rage shot straight through the air, and dared Mappa to try it himself, shoving a hammer into his hands. And just like that, Mappa's eyes blazed with unshakable determination. Mappa stopped waiting around and started crafting every single item himself. And when he stepped in, he looked totally dialed in and professional as hell. Heel and the others could tell right away that Mappa looked like he'd been doing this for ages. And Mappa started pounding the hot iron at full speed. They stared in shock, then Mappa raced through the ice axes and finished them fast. And it came out perfect, clean, elegant, and straight up like a masterpiece. He couldn't wait to put Mappa's one-of-a-kind pickaxe to the test against all the usual ones, because a burning doubt wouldn't leave him alone, were his pickaxes even good enough to use. Once he used them side by side to tear into that cave, all the doubts he carried vanished like smoke. My pickaxe map I forged was way tougher than the usual ones, even though I built it from the exact same iron. Then he spotted the place where he'd stashed the dragonstone, certain it was still there, yet it was gone, nowhere to be found. And then right when he looked down, he spotted a shocking mark on the hole in the ground. He scanned the rocks and realized there had to be bones hiding in the shadows. Then it clicked. Mappa didn't just return, the dragon's stone had brought him back to life. He was buzzing with joy. He'd finally picked up yet another solid comrade he could truly count on. Thanks to Mappa's help, they blasted through the island's coastline level by level. They didn't stop there. They tore the ship down piece by piece and rebuilt it, then pushed even harder into bigger projects and started making real progress. Soon he stumbled on even more slimes, tamed them on the spot, and put them to work hauling rocks. Everything was finally clicking until the turtle stones turned into a nightmare because he kept noticing they were disappearing faster than ever. Rian told him, "I'm totally fine with the turtle stones I already have, but the 10-year lifespan they handed her felt way too short, like the universe cheated her out of everything a girl her age should have gotten." Then he snapped into a realization. helping her wasn't the only reason he'd been pushing himself like that. But honestly, he just wanted Rihanna to stay with him longer, dig deeper, build more, and turn that island into something bigger together. But then, out of nowhere, he burst into a massive room hidden behind the cave he'd just carved. He'd assumed this island was nothing but empty wilderness, until it looked like this island once had a whole past full of chaos, like something major happened here long ago. He decided to tear into the room, rummaging for anything he could grab and keep. He stumbled on a heartstone that could power an artificial organism's core. Now he could forge dolls with it. He calls out, bringing in more comrades for himself, like he's rallying a whole army. Then he charged straight to the middle of the room and grabbed the golden stone right out of the center. It was a change stone, one that could flip a monster's destiny and push it to evolve. When he finally dug into the details, he realized that the change stone didn't just swap a monster's species. It also stole its age and folded in the new species, personality too, and yeah, that freaked him out at first. Then it hit him, an idea sparks in his head, and just like that, later on, he decided to lay it all out to Varys, Rihanna, and Elvin. Varys lined in and swore he knew that stone, because their legends named it. And he leaned in, asking Heel if he knew any creature that looked like a goblin. He remembered the hobgoblins and the leafgoblins like they were nightmares that wouldn't quit. Then Varys leaned in and told him the truth. Those goblins weren't always monsters. The ones hungry for more power swelled into hobgoblins, and the ones craving a life deep in the forest became leaf goblins, and yeah, they all used this change stone too. And after seeing all these examples, he finally gets what evolving really means. Varys froze the moment he laid eyes on the stone for the very first time. And he'll finally remember, way back, that Cave King Crest warned him the stone could evolve and even refresh his lifespan. He leaned in and asked if they wanted to give it a shot. And Elvin admitted he was curious, but he still passed, because he liked his body just the way it was. Then Rihanna cut in, saying she wanted to give it a shot and learn magic, so she could heal others. But her nerves screamed, do I really dare use something this precious? Elvin and Varys bought into that plan right away, and even Heel was totally on board. He leaned in and told her, if you could use your magic, it'll make everything so much easier. And above all, he couldn't stop wishing she'd live, longer than fate ever planned. His words lit a fire in her heart, pushing her to finally choose to evolve. He nodded, then handed over the change stone to her. She cradled it in her hands and shut her eyes tight. He couldn't help it. He started wishing he could stay with Heel for a long, long time. As she pictured the exact species she wanted to transform, the stone flared brighter, and the light was so blinding that everyone had to slam their eyes shut. A few seconds later, Rihanna totally shifted, right before their eyes, into a sweet teenage human girl. She stared at her new look in shock, but MAPPA was the one who got the biggest shock. Seeing that gorgeous girl naked made them break out in a sudden nosebleed. After a few hours, surprise, he finally jolts awake. He couldn't even tell when sleep snuck up on him, and then it hit. He remembered how it all went down when Rihanna finally evolved. He jolted awake to Rihanna looming over him, cradling his head in her lap, and she swore she'd stayed right here for him. Seeing her hit him like a jolt, his face went hot and his nerves went haywire. He shot up right away, but her new look still threw him off. She grabbed the situation and told him to lie down because he'd collapsed out of nowhere. It happened when he shoved himself in front of Renaa, blocking Mappa's nosebleed to protect her. Then the next thing hit. He told her, I'm fine now, then admitted he was still worn out from earlier, asked how long he'd been asleep and what happened to Mappa. She leaned in and told him, Mappa's asleep too. Then he leaned in and asked if she was okay too, because nobody expected her to look human again. She went quiet for a beat, then leaned in and told him the truth. She never really liked who she used to be. She'd been cursed since childhood, and year after year her body turned sickly, so her beautiful sisters mocked her and laughed like it was entertainment. Then her parents tried to help, but even they couldn't escape it, and soon they started shunning her too. That's why once she changed and stared into the mirror, she saw herself exactly the way she'd dreamed, beautiful. She swallowed her pride, apologized to Heel, and admitted she'd wasted that priceless stone on a selfish wish. He told her, you don't have to say that, because ever since he washed up on this island, he'd changed everything about himself. So yeah, she got to start fresh and build a whole new life for herself, too. And that would have been a tragedy, getting stuck in a body she couldn't stand. She flashed a grateful smile and thanked him for being wildly generous and for truly understanding her. Because he gave her a body and a brand new life, she vowed to pour out everything she had for him. He clutched her hands like they were the only words he had left, trying to speak, But then he spotted MAPPA right behind them, and the moment felt like it was about to explode. Which hit them both like a bomb. Rihanna's brand new transformation shocked the Belden tribe too. Then she seized Taryn and other silks and stitched herself a whole new set of clothes. She demanded to know why they were staring at her like that, and then everyone who didn't witness her slow transformation refused to believe it. How could all of this hit her overnight? But the moment they caught Renag grinding her heart out, they knew, yeah, it was really her, and they warmed up to her fast. Then she threw herself into studying magic and martial arts, like nothing else mattered, not even sleep or rest. Fueling endless ambitions after scoring a brand new life. She caught every word, and whatever she chose to do next felt like it was already set in motion. And Heel lit up when he saw her finally enjoying her new look. Varys marched in and demanded, "What are you even thinking?" Varys straight-facedly took it in and said he figured Heel would spot Rihanna's crest, because, yeah, it wasn't like he was staring at her legs. Heel made the smart call. He handed the plantation to Rihanna because her farmer crest could coax crops to grow in abundance. He was stunned to learn goblins could even have crests. Varys didn't dodge the truth when he admitted it was possible. He'll apologize if it came out rude, because he just learned the truth. Only humans have crests. Varys then pulled out his own crest and shoved it right in front of him. Sorcery King, his crest was pure power, and he knew exactly how far it could grow, but Varys told them straight up he couldn't use it because he had zero magic. He could guide Rihanna to study magic with his crest, even if he himself couldn't use it. Then Varys snapped that it was time to fight back against the sea, carve the land back for themselves, grow the island bigger, and rake in even more crops. He decided to carve out bigger spaces so kids could finally run wild and play. Varys said he'd need more raw materials, and then Heald cut in, grinning, telling him he wanted to try something and ordering Varys to hand it over to him. He realized he could tap the workshop anytime, even beyond the cave. So he used it to shape the raw materials into blocks and lay them out exactly where he planned. Then he slammed his water magic down, whipping the seawater away so they were free from the ocean around them. He stuffed it full of rock and gravel, then smothered the surface with the cage spider's dirt. He figured this would be enough for now, and somehow he carved out a huge space with nothing but workshop help. Then Rihanna, Varys, and Elvin rushed over to check it out. Then the kids rolled right after them, loving every second of the place and thanking Heelford with all their hearts. He felt a rush of pride, knowing he'd finally been able to help them. And Rihanna even thanked him, saying she could use this place to grow some seriously awesome crops. He couldn't wait for it either. Then out of nowhere, a giant bird swooped down and slammed into Mappa, before snapping him up and swallowing him whole. And the goblins panicked, because this killer bird was the one that always hunted in packs, and everyone knew it. He barked at everyone to scramble back to the cave. Then they bolted back until one kid suddenly slipped and went down hard, making everything 10 times harder for them. Fola shot toward the kid, trying to help while he kept swatting those birds away with his magic. Then bam, a bird swooped in like it meant business, charging straight at Fola and the kid. Right at the last second, the Elvin's attack sliced the bird's neck clean off. He clung to her life, yanked his daughter to safety, and barked, "Get out of here now." Then he hacked the heads off a whole swarm of killer birds, revealing the terrifying, real power of a Belden tribe general goblin. He finally decided to join the elves and lend a hand to him. Then out of nowhere, another bird came screaming in from behind and went straight for them. But Rihanna snapped up her shield magic and slammed it into the attack, blocking it cold. She looked him in the eye and told him to do what he had to do. And because of her help, he finally put his full focus on tearing into those killer birds. He told Elvin to stay sharp and only strike the birds' heads, because they had no clue which one might be hiding a mapper inside. Varys called them over and told them to meet him right at the entrance, and he'll decide to go all in on protecting it. Then it hit him, he suddenly remembered the heart stone. So he hatched a plan, stacking the rocks he had into a towering golem and jamming the heart stone inside. Then it tore through the birds, wiping them out and smashing the entrances with terrifying ease. While the bird that ate him spit him back out, choking and spinning, and a slime lunged out of nowhere, catching him at the very last second. Now they didn't have to stress about nailing the mapper anymore, and he ordered Elvin to grab them right now. Then Elvin ripped into action, swinging his axes while they hung in place, lashed down tight with Terrence silk ropes, to snare dozens of killer birds in one brutal sweep. The roll hit like a truck, and next thing you know, he's coming in and tearing things up. To seize the birds by blasting them into stillness with blizzard magic. He froze every tied-up one in a single snap. And when they saw that, the other killer birds got wiped out on the spot. The other goblins erupted in cheers, roaring their victory like they'd just won the whole world. Elvin couldn't help grinning as he watched his boss absolutely dominate the fight. Rihanna rushed in to help, then fired off, "Are you hurt?" And he finally confessed that, at first, fear hit him. But she was right here beside him now, and it hit him like a spark in his chest. Heel's legs were trembling like crazy. It was his very first battle against the monsters. Varys burst in, beaming, just relieved to find that they were finally okay. And the rest echoed the same feelings, because after coming so far, he couldn't help but feel genuinely grateful he made it here. Then pride hit him hard, like maybe he really could become a real feudal lord. They headed back to the caves, and on the way he grilled Rihanna, "Can we eat killer birds?" She nodded and said, "Yep, edible," adding that roasted. They were honestly tasty. Later that night, they threw an insane, no-one-ever-seen-before feast, an open banquet for absolutely everybody. He took a deep breath and tried monster meat for the very first time. And man, that thing was insanely tasty, so good it had me grinning the whole time. And Rihanna lit up when she saw he liked it, then urged him to try soul next, because that one hit just as hard. She took a bite of the meat and felt it instantly. The flavor was just a little off. She told him the reason was brutal. Each part of the killer bird tasted totally different depending on what he bit into. He knew killer birds were out there, but he saw a way to turn the threat into a feast, so he ordered the golem to stay on guard and hunt down those birds for food. So Varys felt a surge of relief. Those killer birds wouldn't even come near anything bigger than them. Varys ordered a guard unit, demanded walls and watchtowers to shield the fields from ocean salt, and thrust the stonework onto Heel, then made him call Varys in for the planning. He caught a girl locking eyes with him, but no matter how hard he tried, her name slipped his mind. But he couldn't ignore it. She was Elvin's daughter. He made her repeat her own name, even though he was the one who'd given it to her in the first place, Fulla. She stared at him and demanded to know how he was that strong. He told her it was all because of the magic stones he got, thanks to mining. Fulla practically lit up when she heard about stones like these, then hurriedly asked if she could dig too. Rihanna then leaned in and told Fulla she had to use a change stone to evolve and unlock her magic. Then Fuller decided he had to evolve next, but he realized it couldn't happen because he had no resources at all. Elvin stormed in and clocked Fulla with a punch for messing with Heel. He ordered her to stop snapping rudely at Heel, and Elvin immediately apologized, while Heel watched, shocked at how clearly she looked just like her father. He leaned in and told Fulla she could use the change stone if she managed to track one down all on her own. When she heard that, her excitement erupted, and she immediately decided to join. Join the healing and the mining. She swore she'd be the one who's actually helpful in the end. And honestly, he was thrilled. Now that more hands were finally in the mines, the whole grind could move. Then he dumped 800 magic stones into the ride to crank her magic power way higher. And she took the weight on her shoulders, pushing herself to make it even better. Elvin told her, "If you want it to work, you've got to eat right, and you'll have to do it soon." As the day wrapped up, Heel finally reclaimed that land, and topped it off with food so good it tasted like victory. That day marked the very first Memorial Day in the Shield Reef. Then the next day was even wilder. Rihanna pitched the idea, so he marched into the cold freezer to lock up tons of food, and he built the place huge. And ended up catching a cold all on his own. Now that they had a freezer, they didn't have to sweat spoiled meat anymore, and she even said those frozen caves could keep food good for more than half a year. Mappa figured out the door's shape, ordered it, and had it built by Heel, who somehow instantly got exactly what design Mappa wanted. Later, they even revamped the forge, and Mappa and Varys stepped in to handle it. While Reen occasionally shouldered the task of casting freeze on the frozen cave, her confidence was skyrocketing fast. Thanks to Elvin's and Varys, the outer defenses were finally getting built right, and once he saw it all holding strong, he dashed back to mining without wasting another second. Fulem admitted she couldn't believe how smoothly it all went. Nothing went wrong, and that made her speechless. She couldn't believe it. Somehow the Cave King pulled off all this help without a single cave in sight. She told him they had to add ventilation fast, because letting dust pile up and sit in their lungs was basically asking for trouble. If they piled coal gas inside, it would poison everyone, or even blow the cave apart, so she swallowed the fear and decided to ask Mappa to build a device that could pump fresh air from within to the outside later. Fuller's words lit the way, and she admitted she'd been planting ideas in people's minds since she was still little. Because she carried the miner's crest, it steadied him, like he'd finally found something he could trust. and let her talk without limits if she spotted anything else that needed changing. She was the real deal, sharp, seasoned, and scary good at spotting the perfect rhythm for those oars, and since Terran, she'd been his fiercest rival. Then Fuller leaned in and demanded to know, did Heel have a father? He shot back that yes, he had one, but it crushed him so badly too. Even after he finally unlocked those incredible powers, he still couldn't forget his father. He feared him like he feared his own brothers, because his family still held boundless power, far stronger than anything he'd gained. Then he leaned in and asked Fula if she wanted to be stronger than her father. Like, come on, the answer was basically screaming obvious. Then Fula charged straight at a hollow cave, heart racing with curiosity, and sprinted in at once to see what secrets waited inside. She stepped into that massive stone chamber and asked if the new stone was kept in a place just like this one too. He gave the green light, and she practically exploded with excitement as she dug in to search even more. Then one of the statues twitched to life and blasted him with fire magic. He'll somehow whip up a shield just in time, keeping himself alive in Fuller. He leaned in and asked, "Are you okay?" Then he sized up the statues. Turns out they were basically golems, and they could even sling magic. Then the golems came at him nonstop, and a few of them even brandished swords. They closed in on him in tighter and tighter numbers, but he didn't panic. He already had a plan ready. He whipped wind magic into roaring storms, and somehow still pulled it off, managing to blast those golems out of the sky. Fuller was fine, and she quickly apologized for barreling ahead without thinking it through. He had absolutely no idea he'd end up facing golems like these. Then he motioned to Shell, and Shell snapped signals to everyone else to halt the mining right then. Then Fulla stumbled on a stone and blurted to Heel, "Is this a golden change stone?" Turns out it was a wicked sorcery stone that could conjure dolls out of thin air. She stared at it, heart sinking, because it wasn't a change stone after all. Then Mappa burst out of nowhere, and it totally startled her. Mappa went for his sword, yanking it free from the wreckage. Golems let out joyful roars, and then bounded back up to the surface. Fulla couldn't stop wondering how long Mappa was going to keep walking around naked, so she fired off a question. Were all humans like that? Mappa snapped that it wasn't true, but the grin on his face said he was excited way more than usual. He lunged to grab another golem's sword, but no matter how hard he strained, he couldn't budge it. His sword just wouldn't move. Even if he and Fulla threw everything they had at it together. He lunged for the sword, but the crest slammed the truth in his face. He couldn't take it, because the only things he was allowed to grab were minerals and mined items. Then he gritted his teeth, raised a pickaxe, and smashed the sword to pieces. But it still wouldn't budge. He kept straining, trying to smash the sword again and again. After countless tries, he finally smashed through it. He couldn't stop thinking, what was that sword even made of? Then it turned out to be orichalcum, lighter than metal, stronger than steel, and perfect for enchanting deadly magic effects. Then he dove deeper into his inventory, and what he spotted next hit him like a bombshell. Meanwhile, back in the main cave, Elvin gritted his teeth and strained with everything he had, fighting to hoist the sword Mappa dragged back with him. Soon Heel came back too, slid into the moment, and demanded, "What the heck is going on?" Riel leaned in and spilled the truth about the sword, then revealed that everyone was straining, desperate to lift it. He warned them this would be brutal. The sword was forged from 300 precious orichalcum pieces. Fulu tried to explain to her father that it was impossible, but he wouldn't hear it. But Elvin wouldn't quit. He kept grinding, and somehow he managed to lift the sword glowed even brighter after the great warrior crest supercharged him. But he couldn't hold it up for long, and it crashed to the ground. Heil dashed up to him and slammed his recovery magic onto the wound, and luckily it wasn't even that bad. Fuller wasted no time. She rushed up and wrapped her arms around her father in a tight hug. She was terrified for him, then snapped, "Idiot," because the moment he did that, she couldn't stop worrying. He threw out a heartfelt apology and swore he'd be way more careful from that moment on. Meanwhile, Mappa effortlessly hoisted the sword and carried it like it weighed nothing. He jammed his sword into the furnace, and the heat swallowed it whole. Mappa came from a legendary dwarven race, so he hunted rare minerals, and once his insane strength, secret techniques, and noble heart kicked in, he started forging something incredible from orichalcum. Mappa then took a bold swing at fate. He forged the thing he needed and rushed in to heal. He handed them the forged item, like Mappa had cooked it up just for him. It was an orichalcum-forged pickaxe. Then, right after that, Mappa kept cranking out even more orichalcum tools, and for some reason, he was determined to stay completely naked while he did it. The very next day, Elvin threw himself into a fight, but when he swung his axe, it just wouldn't work on whatever he was facing. Then Elvin took it personally, charged right up to the monster, and stared it down face to face. Meanwhile, back in the cave, Fuller paced the shadows, scanning every inch like he expected trouble to jump out. And she signed off on it, perfect, because that ventilation hole had finally cleared the air. He tapped MAPPA's spinning blades to churn out tidal energy, pushing fresh air in nonstop. But Fuller insisted she just wanted to get back to mining, and he'll back her up with the exact same take. But he refused to move yet, because they'd been hit just yesterday. She finished up and headed straight to the forge by herself, while he frantically tried to figure out how everyone could mine safely. He decided to forge brand new golems, and this time he demanded they be sharper and truer, so he dropped to the ground and started sketching the golem's design right there. He got so carried away that he crafted a wild design made entirely of orichalcum, loaded with swords, bow guns, magic stones, and every last weapon detail you could imagine. His smile flipped into pure laughter, then Rihanna showed up to see what on earth he was up to. He snapped into shock when she popped up out of nowhere, and she rushed to apologize just to pull him out of his head while she kept working. She asked if he had a moment, and he didn't hesitate. He agreed right away. So she grabbed him and dragged him along with her, like she was making an exception, and that was totally out of character for her. She demanded he follow her in total silence, and together they headed straight for her farm. He was totally stunned when he realized she brought him straight to the plantations. It turns out there were way more apples, grapes, and even lemon and palm trees growing here, and he kept praising Rihanna for being such a great orchid, while she thanked him for noticing her hard work. But she bluntly said they still didn't have enough for everyone, and then she lit up with an idea. Then she focused all her power and slammed her punch straight into the coconut tree. A coconut dropped from the tree, and then she launched into the air, and she brought those kicks down like a storm, slicing through them, and all of it was only possible because of the martial arts skills she honed while training under General Elvin. He went completely wide-eyed when he finally saw this raw, unexpected side of her as she grabbed the lemons, tore them open, and squeezed their juice straight into the coconut mix. She stirred it into water and convinced herself they could savor it in moderation. He couldn't stop wondering where she pulled that crazy power from, and then he took a sip of the juice she just whipped up. He couldn't stop staring at that juice. Every sip was a mind-blowing rush because it hit with that perfect mix of refreshing sweetness and sharp bite, way better than the juice he'd had earlier. Then from the shoreline, he heard something, sharp, unmistakable sounds coming in waves. Elvin just cleared the shell monster, and this piece belonged to them. Earlier, down on the back of the island, he snatched a Satan shell out of the shadows. Elvin snapped at everyone to stay on guard if they stumble across one, and Varys warned them not to mess around with forcing anything open, because Elvin could do it himself, and he was strong enough to make it look easy. Varys leaned in and wrung something out of the shell, and then he snapped, "What do you think it is?" As Mappa rushed to taste it, the numbness hit. He crumpled to the ground, because that same numbing liquid was lurking inside Satan's shell, and the shell unleashed it on its prey. Varys tossed out a playful line like, "Go ahead, this poison can turn into something lethal real fast." He laughed and said it was just a joke, but then admitted you could actually use it to harvest purple dye. To save his turf from killer birds, Satan unleashed his shells and domains. He forged 14 brand new golems and christened each one with a number, 1 through 14. Numbers 6 through 15 showed up with magic stones, while the remaining 2 locked in defensive magic, and the last 2 chose one of the 4 attributes to master. Then the Watcher slammed the bell of doom, and everyone instantly knew more Satan shells were coming. They came crashing in through the stretch of wall that wasn't finished yet. 50 of them showed up at once, and doubt instantly clawed at them. Could they even survive fighting them all? Hal lined in and demanded to know Varys' biggest weakness. He told him the Satan shells were never going to survive a lightning strike. He told Elvin to step back and hand it to him, because he was itching to try out the brand new golems he'd just cooked up. Elvin nodded along and told him to keep an eye out. If anything went wrong, he'll had to call him. Rihanna leaned in and asked if she could come too, because she already knew lightning magic. Hal yelled golem number 1, and with 6, 7, and 14, 15 locked in too. He marched straight into battle against the Satan shells. Shells slammed onto the walls, rained down on the golems, and crushed them with a relentless fury. He ordered 6 and 7 to lock onto the area and defend everyone with shield spells. Then Rihanna snapped a lightning spell, and they were gone in the blink of an eye. While Elvin and Varys stared at the Satan shells grinding through the fight, the golems looked like unstoppable mobile forts, built to outlast anything. Then Heel ordered 14 and 15 to blast them with lightning attacks, right on the spot. The shells caved under the pressure, poured out their liquids, and golems slammed up their shields so easily, and the same thing kept happening. Then the operation roared on, and lightning-fast shells tore across the end like a final flash. Elvin couldn't stop smiling. Those golems were handling their duty perfectly, shielding Heel from the numbing liquid. And this whole ordeal wrapped up way faster than he ever expected. Golems unleashed serious magic in the middle of the fight, then he gave loud praise to everyone, and to Rihanna for stepping in and helping him. After the chaos, a few shells were still left scattered behind. And from behind, he blasted numbing liquid straight into his heel. Rihanna clocked it at the last second and threw herself in the way to shield him. Elvin wrestled with the shell, then he suddenly realized Rihanna was on top of him, coating him in numbing liquid. Her whole body seized up with numbness, and she couldn't move an inch. And just like that, he healed her on the spot, and she couldn't stop thanking him. And he mentioned that she was totally sticky now. Then he figured she had to feel gross from it, so he bolted off to grab her some water fast. Along the way, he spotted a tiny pear tucked inside a protective shell. And finding one inside Satan's shells was insanely rare, like spotting a treasure no one ever expects to see. Then Heel snapped and decided Rihanna was getting it, because he truly thought she and the pair would look perfect together. While she spiraled into a total panic over it and hurried back, right back to the... She shoved the pearl into his hands, then bolted into the shadows like her life depended on it. He took one look at it and knew he couldn't hand it over yet, so he held it back and kept it close. The very next day, while he was mining, he finally carved out a break and hung out with Fula and Shell. But Full wasn't done. He refused to rest and kept digging deeper, harder than ever. He reminded her to eat, and she waved it off. There's no way she'd ever skip a thing a princess makes. He ditched Golem 9 behind, keeping it on standby, so if anything went sideways, he could ring that bell and stop the disaster before it spread. They kicked their mining back off under Golem's protection, and he couldn't ignore how much fire Fula had compared to everyone else. Then they hauled themselves to Rihanna to eat. Today's meal absolutely unloaded the Satan Shells course on the table, and you could feel the danger in every bite. It looked so irresistible that they couldn't resist diving in. Turns out Satan's shells had burrowed right near them, and because of that they struck gold, fresh dyes, packed meals, and armor that actually held up. But the waves around the shield reef churned and pulled at everything in their path. If it gets any closer, the monster's body is right there, ready to swallow them whole. After that, they were checking out Tyrion's purple like it was the coolest thing in the world, which everyone knew the nobles wore, and he decided to harness it to craft outfits for them. Then Elvin stormed in, and his serious expression said trouble was already here. Then he demanded he'll tag, along with him, to the reclaimed land. After he finally got there to see what went down, he stared in shock at what he found. They dragged in the dead orc, trapped and tangled like he'd been snapped up by the embankment, and pulled him straight into place. He immediately recognized that orc seal on its hands, the same one that belonged to back to the same tribe that wiped out their hometown, burning it to the ground. The other goblins lost it, snarling and kicking the corpse to pieces. Their whole kind put them in that miserable state in the first place. He stepped in to stop them, but they brushed him off and kept going anyway. He figured he didn't even have the right to stop them, because their tribes had already been wiped out. Then Princess Reese slammed the brakes on the whole group and stopped them dead in their tracks, and when she saw those goblins kicking a dead person, her rage exploded, because that disgrace was an insult to her whole tribe's pride. The goblins swore it all started with these orcs, because they wiped out their tribes, and it wasn't just one time. But they even paraded their king's dead body to send a brutal warning. Still, she refused to let them turn into those orcs, no matter what. She told him that Heel had to choose how they handled this whole mess. She shot him a quick apology, making sure he knew she was sorry for the hassle she caused. And he shot her a grateful look, because he realized he felt the exact same way, just like she'd been telling everyone. He decided to grab the lead right now. If he was the chief, then he'd take the charge. He could see it instantly. These people were boiling with frustration, raging out of anger, and desperate to blow off steam. But he refused to let them do something that sickly, kicking a dead person like it was nothing. He bowed low, snapped for everyone's attention, and demanded they swallow their rage. Everyone cringed with shame, realizing their mess forced their boss to hang his head. Elvin and Varys practically yanked the moment out of him and demanded he lift his head right away. Then Hell shoved the job onto Varys, handle the burial for the orc's dead body. Then just like that, he realized this body wasn't the only one out there. But the ocean churned with lifeless bodies, floating everywhere on the surface. They hauled every last dead body out in a rush. And yeah, some kobolds too, goblins' blood-hungry rivals, right there on the battlefield fighting alongside the orcs. He'll ask whether orcs and kobolds ever duked it out here, but that still won't explain why they're showing up in this godforsaken remote spot around him. Elvin barged in and told him the worst part. Every corpse's battle wound looked insanely horrible, and something about it felt terribly wrong. So many scars that an axe or sword never could have carved them. He swore it had to be fangs, based on the wound size, but the thing's teeth were way too monstrous, bigger than anything he'd ever seen. Even half the orcs were torn apart, only pieces of their bodies remained. He demanded to know if Elvin was trying to tell him they got attacked by something else. Elvin wasn't sure, so he snapped the plan into place. Brace up, tighten their defenses, and keep an eye out for those arm ships, while the Cave King still couldn't make heads or tails of it either. Then he handed Varys the grim duty of the burials, and left Elvin to hold the line and man the defenses. Meanwhile, Rihanna and he sprinted through the chaos, hunting for anything they could grab, because survival meant using every advantage they found. Everything around here was falling apart, like the whole place was barely hanging on. Then out of nowhere, he heard something and he snapped, "Rihanna, is that you?" Then you realize the voice isn't calling from the room at all, it's echoing out of a treasure chest. He grinned, then used his pick skills to pop the chest lock open. The moment the box popped open, something darted out of it in a flash. Then he cradled it in his hands, right there, squirming and warm, a puppy. And the puppy instantly started zooming around on his body, like it owned the place. He turned to Rihanna and blurted, "What am I supposed to do right here? Because I'm lost, but come on, tell me." Right as soon as the puppy peed on his clothes, panic hit him fast, while Rihanna just stood there, laughing her head off. And she promised right there that she'd wash his clothes. Then he glanced over at that adorable puppy. Rihanna just wanted everyone to see the truth. She believed that a baby kobold couldn't possibly be guilty of anything. So she decided the whole tribe had to get it, because they all needed to help watch that baby kobold. The very next day, he'll fire up the pick again and keep mining, digging up even more minerals for extraction. That's why he was obsessed with the brand new special orichalcum ice axe, crafted by MAPPA for every single swing. He was on edge about a coming fight out on the coastal waters, but he had zero answers for what to do, so for now, the only move was to keep mining. He pushed to dig up even more raw materials, anything he could use to defend the island once he'd mined its minerals. He kept scooping everything up and kept darting back to his inventory, checking it like it mattered with every heartbeat. He realized the magic stones were starting to dry up. Now he was getting way fewer, which he wanted to stack up so he could crank Rihanna's magic energy even higher, because he figured he'd need those same reserves for Fula and Vera someday too. But right now, he had no power to stop it. Then his gaze locked onto a brand new item he pulled straight from mining, only now he had no idea what in the world it even was. Even the Cave King crest couldn't clue him in, because this wasn't stone at all, it was a seed. And then Bam Fula showed up to call him out, and he shot back, asking if she was here to mine too. She warned him that something was wrong with the baby kobold, and it wouldn't stop crying, non-stop. Even while Elvin was busting out funny faces to try to crack him up, he just wouldn't laugh. Seeing it fail, Taryn stepped in too, trying to make the baby kobold laugh, but the little thing just kept sobbing. Then Fula stormed in and kicked Elvin for making the baby cry even harder. His face was pure terror, not a joke. Money, Elvin leaned in and told her he'd done the very same thing just to hear her laugh when she was a little baby. But Heel snapped that he wasn't doing anything, he was just trying to scare him off. Elvin greeted his boss with a grin. Baby Cobalt's eyes snapped open, and he realized that Heel was finally here. So he rushed right up to him and started messing with Heel immediately. Turns out the baby kobold wasn't crying for no reason. He'd been awake since his nap and kept looking out for Heels the whole time. Rihanna warned him that the baby kobold might end up seeing him as its father, because that earlier pee he sprayed on Heel could have been nothing less than the baby marking him. Varys said baby kobold had one instinct above all, its tiny imprinting magic locked onto whoever was near. Then he'll corner him and demand answers. What in the world was he doing with that chest where they found the baby? Varys told him the chest was way shallower than they'd assumed, because what sat inside didn't match how deep it looked from the outside, so Varys figured there was a false bottom in it, and he even tried prying it open with an orichalcum knife, but it wouldn't budge, no matter that the bottom was solid wood. Hyle couldn't forget, these cases were usually the ones that ended up cracking only through special locks. And he blasted open a secret false bottom with magic. They cheered because it actually worked, and he pulled out everything right then. It was stashed in a fake bottom, packed behind 3 books about the Histi, like a secret screaming to be found. History, secret techniques, and sacred scriptures of the Tybris tribe, plus a mysterious whitestone. He studied the books' names, then chased every clue about their tribe and he couldn't stop staring at that stone, and then his crest clued him in. This wasn't just any rock, it was the thought stone built to store thoughts. Elvin and Rihanna pressed him for answers, but Varys just sat there like he already knew everything. Then the stone erupted in blinding light, and right on cue, it activated. He emerged the hologram of a female kobold, staring at her like, "Who are you?" And Rihanna found her pretty, too, right beside him. Cobalt and that recorded thought were meant only for the ones brave enough to crack open the chest seal. She stepped forward and declared herself Ilhamina, queen of the Tybris tribe, then revealed the baby cobalt they'd found in the chest was her brand new newborn. Elvin's fury flared at the Tiberius tribe, but he said nothing, just listened to the message. As she kept talking, she warned him she was running out of time fast. She kept insisting that their ship was getting hunted by the legendary Leviathan, the beast everyone fears. They were already wiped out from fighting orcs earlier, and now their weapons and magic wouldn't even scratch the beast, so there was no escape from its clutches. She made one demand: whoever cracked open that chest would become the baby's foster parents. And as payment for accepting it, she swore she'd hand over their 2 fiercest warriors, plus the secret books they used to guard the chest, books outsiders weren't even allowed to see. She begged them to take full care of her baby, and if fate would be kind, let him hear her final words someday. Ilhamina, the baby's mom, poured her whole heart into that message, and it was clear she loved him to pieces. Her smile lit up the moment, and her message landed too, but the baby was still too tiny to grasp what it even meant. As that recorded thought finally cut off, everyone just froze. What happened to Tiberius was all they could think about. Elvin was fuming. How could they dump their kid on someone else like that? And where the heck were those escorts she kept bragging about? Rihanna snapped at Elvin to quit acting like that, and he bolted off to warn their watchmen about what just went down. Hyles discovered they had already figured out Tybris. Fula finally leaned in and spilled the truth, how the Tybris and Belden tribes had been clawing at those territories for ages. She was crushed with grief, because her brother had fallen in that same war too. Hyle let out a breath of relief when Elvin didn't glare at the baby cobalt, even after hearing the recorded. Fula leaned in and told him, "My dad would never hate a child, never." And Varys followed him, whispering that the Elven general blamed himself for failing to protect his son. Turns out Varys lost his brother in the war too, and somehow, Rage never got the chance to lock onto the baby. Once he could hear every cry loud and clear, Heel snapped into action and decided he'd take care of the baby from now on. That one move lit up the room and made everyone else grin. Then he turned to them and demanded, "What are we naming the baby?" And even in the recorded thoughts, his name still wasn't spelled out. Rihanna admitted she might have left the baby unnamed on purpose, hoping whoever found him would fall for the idea that he was meant to be theirs. Then he leans in and asks her straight up if she has any idea what they should name it. She paused for a second, then looked him straight in the eye and told him they should name the baby Real. He even loved the name, and the second it was said, the baby Cobalt was officially christened Real. Still, the baby was counted among the tamed ones, even though it wasn't on purpose. But then he realized, yeah, if the baby was going to grow up in caves too, that plan actually made sense. Fuller couldn't resist. He teased Rihanna for naming the baby by blending pieces of both her name and heel, S. Rihanna completely blushed when she heard her own comment. Right after that, Varys shut the room down and said, "Hold up, there's something else we have to talk about, and it's worrying." They finally realized the Mark of Giants could blast half a body to dust and make the rest shrug off every weapon. Everyone points to the colossal, legendary beast, Leviathan. After that whole mess finally cooled down, Mappa whipped up a brand new invention and begged Heel to test it with his magic. Then he demanded, "Are you sure?" After he got the green light, he slammed it with a roaring burst of flame magic. The new invention wasn't what they hoped for. It turned into a shield, clutched by a golem like a weapon from fate. Turns out that tactic hit way harder than the shield magic, so hard that he felt like he could finally trust it with his life. Varys pointed at it and asked the others, "So what are you all doing?" Garrison sealed the plan around another jaw-dropping Mappa masterpiece, one that would let them fend off even giant monsters and protect the island. Heel still couldn't shake the fear of that beast, so he pressed Varys to swear Leviathan was more than just a myth. Then Elvin admitted, straight up, he didn't believe it either. But once Queen Alhemino's squad of strong soldiers, led by her, ran straight into the beast and got wiped out, their fear made perfect sense. Then he'll drive Riel's bark hurting forward, and once he turns to look back and check on it. He was perched high on the construction logs, looking down like the whole world was below him. Elvin realized he was trapped, and before he could think twice, he lunged in to rescue him. But during the tumble, he dropped downward, yet somehow still pulled off saving Riel, and Rhianna's face lit up when she saw Riel and General Elvin were both safe. Elvin couldn't shake the feeling that Riel might be out there in the fields, right about now. She told them Riel was absolutely bursting with energy out in the field, digging fast without stopping, while he kept wandering around, and she just couldn't keep pace. Varys told her the Cobalt kids used to grow up at lightning speed, and said that before long, Riel would be standing on two legs too. Heel blinked in shock at that, but then it clicked. He remembered it from the fields. About that seed he'd dug up earlier, he pulled it out and grilled Varys, demanding to know if he recognized it. Varys had zero clue which seed was the right one. Then Rhianna cut in and claimed it was a seed from Yggdrasil. Heel, Varys, and even Rhianna were left completely stunned. She explained why she even knew it, and then admitted it just slipped out of her mouth like she couldn't stop it. Turned out the whole reason was her farmer's crest, one spark that granted her knowledge of every plant. Varys then leaned in and admitted he actually knew all about Yggdrasil. It was this massive, sacred tree that seemed to bless every living thing out there, and yeah, only the legends even talked about it. Just like the change stone that came right after it. Heel circled the island, hunting for the perfect spot to start mining, and unearthed a hidden path there, then realized this was the perfect opening. They carved out their own spot in the field, stacked with the materials they already had enough of. Then he barked at the spiders to get digging and fetch the goods, because his collecting power only worked inside the cave, and he desperately needed help clearing out the dirt. After that, he threw himself into the job and worked the place nonstop for a while. That very evening, he whipped up fresh reclaimed land for them both, then sprinted to the middle of it and buried the Yggdrasil seed right there. Rhianna rolled up her sleeves and started planting flowers everywhere. She scattered even more seeds around the place, ones she'd saved from her hometown, because she couldn't help but feel it would be amazing. Then Bam Mappa burst out of nowhere, just in time to watch Yggdrasil plant itself. Rhianna blinked and the Yggdrasil seed had already begun sprouting, way too fast. He grilled both of them about the sunstone, and neither one had touched it. So he decided, all right, let's try the sunstone right now. And the moment she used it on the plant, it shot up at lightning speed, turning into a full-grown tree in just seconds. He realized the sunstone was the kind of legendary power that could blow his mind. But the tree shot up again, growing so fast it felt impossible. He leaned in and asked Rhianna if she was really sure she only used one sunstone. She nodded and swore that was the truth. And then they finally clocked it. This level of growth was too much, and the tree needed space from them right now. They bolted the second they could, sprinting a few steps away from the tree. As Mappa sprinted, he suddenly stumbled and hit the ground then. Then the tree sealed him in from every side, swallowing him whole. And just as it kept exploding in size, Rhianna and Heel barely scraped out and made it to safety. And before long, the tree had shot up to its full size, big enough that people on the other reclaimed land could see it from miles away, which sat on the far end of the island, and Elvin and Varys just so happened to see it with their own eyes. Rhianna and Heel couldn't believe their eyes when they saw just how gigantic the tree really was, proving why everyone whispered the same legend, Yggdrasil, the tree that defies belief. After all that, Heel suddenly dug into his memories, back when a little monster was getting pounded over and over by a bunch of boys. They kept hammering it with attacks while it was helplessly chained up. They'd swarm it the second they had a free moment, just itching to get in and cause trouble. Their leader was Oren, and he pushed the group to keep honing their magic attack, aimed right at that tiny target. Even if they all belonged to the elite magic academy. They promised themselves they wouldn't finish it off, so they just kept chipping away at the monster, one hit at a time, whenever they could. Even though Heel used to fear them, now that fear has him frozen, so he's terrified to strike back. So he waited once, and that was it, once they finished and came back to the academy. He used to wander up to the monster, and when it finally clicked, yeah, he'd even named it Lopes. He confessed he'd been caring for Lopes every single day, but now he was wrecked with guilt. His healing magic just wasn't strong enough to save Lopes this time. As time dragged on, Lope's wound kept rotting deeper until it was beyond healing, and he couldn't even break free from those shackles anymore. He just knew it. At this pace, Lopes was going to die. Then he stayed right there with him, until the next time Iran rolled back in with his goons and started demanding why Heel was standing in front of Lopes. He's about to snap his mouth open and beg Oren, "Stop this right now and let Lopes go." Oren didn't like that one bit, so he yanked off his glove and whipped Heel with it. Oren couldn't stand it. Heel was on his knees begging to spare Lopes, even with all that royalty nonsense, and it snapped Oren's temper right in half. And he demanded Heel step aside, sneering that he was nothing but a powerless man, or else he'd turn him to ash, pulverizing Heel along with the Lobes. He knew there was nothing left to do but drop to his knees and beg for Lopes' life. So we kept begging Oren, again and again, until our voices were worn out. Oren couldn't stand the sight of his pathetic begging anymore. It killed every last bit of excitement. And told Heel he could do whatever he wanted. Heel nearly choked on surprise when Iran flipped his decision, but before the dust could settle, Iran snapped that this kind of training had bored him to death. He was done with the monsters. He couldn't help grinning when he heard that. Then Oren grabbed his attention and ordered him to run over and rip the shackles off Lopes. He told them Heel could do anything he wanted, so if he wanted to set Lopes free, nobody could stop him. But he couldn't let some monster slither around the capital, so if he spotted Lopes again, he'd cut it down fast. Oren handed Heel the order and gave him seconds to carry it out. And he'd try to free the Lobes, but he already knew he couldn't. Oran snapped into action, counting down from 10. As the countdown keeps shrinking, he'll dig deep, push himself to the limit, and race to save the Lobes before it's too late. He tore the shackles off, kept jabbing at the bars with the picks, but no matter how hard he struck, it still wouldn't give. Lopez suddenly realized, out of nowhere, that death was closing in on him fast. Lopez flashed a grin the moment the counting finished, like he'd just won the whole game. In the very next second, Lopez was nothing but ashes, then despair crushed him as he watched Lopes die right in front of his eyes. Oren tore into him, screaming that it was unforgivable to let his friend die like that. But deep down, he already knew he couldn't save Lopes at all. He sprinted in to punch Oren, but that shield snuffed his shot. He couldn't even get close. Hale seethed at Oren while he sobbed his heart out, grieving over Lopes. Oran leaned in and told Heel, crystal clear, that someone as weak as him. He couldn't even dream of intimidating anyone when those eyes of his looked strong enough to crush a warning. Then it hit him. He woke up on a bed inside a medical building. Somehow, he hauled himself up, dragged his way back, and found Lopes' remains still sitting there. The locket around his neck wasn't a jewel at all. It was packed with the ashes of the Lobes he held dearest. And guilt crushed him because he'd promised what he couldn't deliver, so he finally told Rihanna, "This is the real me." She shot back with confidence, telling him he wasn't powerless at all. She reminded him how hard he'd pushed for the Belden tribe, Riel and Lopez included. And every time he stepped up to help, she couldn't hold it together. Tears spilled as his story hit her heart. She apologized to him because he'd already been through more than anyone should have to handle. He couldn't shake the feeling. Why did he decide to tell her this story right now? And finally realized he didn't need advice. He just needed someone who'd listen. Then Rihanna wiped away her tears in just a few moments. Riel strutted right up to them with a bright, cheerful grin. The three of them sprang to their feet and marched straight into the trees around them. And once it hit him, he knew exactly what he wanted. He had to tell Rihanna his whole story. Once they burst through the trees, the fields exploded with flowers. Everywhere in Rihanna's hometown, every corner belonged to her. Riel beamed as he sprinted around the field, soaking up every second like it was pure sunshine. Then Rihanna shouted for Heel and told him, "I know you can't scrub away the regrets you still feel for Lopez. From here on out, he can't ever forget. When things get brutal, she and everyone else will always be right there for him." He'd finally stopped being lonely, because now he had a whole massive family by his side. And he couldn't stop feeling grateful to Rihanna for it. Then he sent Varys to dig deeper into the Yggdrasil tree, and Varys uncovered that its leaves could be brewed into tea or ground into life-saving salve. But if you went overboard and drank too much, it could knock you out for days, so everyone had to stay careful with it. The tree's branches weren't just light, they were tough enough to handle orichalcum tools. They even tried to carve orichalcum ice axe handles out of it. After grinding through task after task, the hours vanished fast, and suddenly it was dinner time. He wasted no time and told Fully all about it. But she insisted she wasn't tired yet, and he told her she could push on and keep going tomorrow. So she nodded, slid her pickaxe back in place, and he figured the Yggdrasil branches weren't just for looks, they eased the fatigue too. That tree really did hand out blessings to whoever stepped up, and with the flower fields always bursting in bloom, he couldn't wait to harvest the fresh new crops he was counting on. He smiled because island life was finally getting richer. Then, before long, Riel dropped into a deep sleep. Then he trudged into bed, staring at the dark, already bracing for whatever chaos tomorrow would throw at him. When he woke up that morning, Riel was acting strangely, tears streaming down her face. When they heard him sniffling, others rushed over too, desperate to find out why he was crying. And Heel told everyone Riel might be stuck in a nightmare, so Rihanna moved in fast and tried to soothe him. But something felt off in his gut, then he finally healed no. Noticed the mark crawling in Riel's left eye. Then it clicked what they saw was a crest. Next thing they knew, the whole area around them blasted into pure white. Riel's mark blasted signals straight into other people's brains. And they caught a glimpse of his memory, the day the Tybris tribe met its end. Dozens of cobalt workers lay slaughtered on the floor, their bodies brutalized and their limbs hacked off the board. And Elhamina was fighting tooth and nail, pushing every ounce of courage into keeping everyone else safe from the beast. But the monster was just too damn strong, and it tore straight through her barrier like it was nothing. She yanked her staff right along with that hand and went for the shield again. But her brave attempt crumbled as the monster surged forward and devoured her, along with half the ship. Heel nearly crumpled to his knees just from staring at the monster, and Rihanna didn't look any less terrified. Everyone stared at the same sight, and they all realized, in one terrifying moment, just how deadly the Leviathan really was. And once that image hit, fear slammed into him, and sweat started pouring. Varys leaned in and said he'd seen it. Riel's gaze held clairvoyance, plain as day. They said this crest was God's all-seeing eye, watching everything. So yeah, everything they just witnessed was exactly what Riel had already seen before. Right before he and his mother finally parted ways, the power of Claire would change everything. Clairvoyance hit the entire island at once, and every single person watched in horror as Leviathan's terrifying power exploded into view. The whole island braced in fear. Would Leviathan finally strike? And if it did, what could anyone possibly do against something like that? They panicked, so they made sure they healed too. He had no clue what he'd do if Leviathan ever showed up here. And if he could genuinely shield every single one of them, would it even be possible? Elvin blurted it out at the top of his lungs to make sure everyone heard. Everyone, knock it off with those sour faces. Remember everything you've survived up to this point. And if they teamed up with Heel, there'd be nothing they couldn't pull off, because he kept everyone's faith in Heel burning bright. Then he shot up and marched right over to them, telling them to breathe, calm down, and start prepping for a possible strike on the island, because even if it wasn't guaranteed, they couldn't afford to ignore a legendary beast. No matter how brutal that power got, it would never be enough. They'd still fight it off every last bit. He turned to the crowd and demanded they all lend him their strength. Then he snapped into focus and started plotting his next move. After watching Alamina go toe-to-toe with Leviathan, he finally got it. His magic stood no chance against that thing. So he went straight to MAPPA and demanded to know if orichalcum weapons would actually work. MAPPA had zero clue. Everyone just jammed their own ideas into the pot and hoped it would all come together. He dug deep, trying to carve out a way through it. So he had to make the call. He decided to dive straight into the deep place inside. The cave where he stumbled on the golem, and right then, the thought hit him, turn it into his refuge. And they could just slap down a freezer right beside it to stash their supplies. But Elvin warned that if the beast lunged at the island, it could come crashing down, and told everyone to fall back right now. Hill said, "I've got an idea for that too." And he began carving out a space from scratch, built for a purpose no one expected. After that, he got obsessed with finding fresh materials and pushed the idea on everyone, talking it through like their next big move. While everyone was living their lives above ground, the island was leveling up nonstop. New discoveries underground kept it growing bigger and stronger. He couldn't shake the feeling that the Sheol Reef still hid mysteries, like something was sleeping under those caves, waiting to rise up and challenge a monster as brutal as Leviathan. Vera can't let him guess in the dark. She tells him to take Riella with him this time and find out for real. He figured his clairvoyance could finally come in clutch. So he took off, hauling Riel along in his bag. Right after the search kicked off, Ray dozed off and did absolutely nothing. He figured Riel would wake any minute, so he bolted off to explore on his own while he waited. And just like that, the entire island teamed up, brainstorming every possible move to build a defensive plan against the Leviathan. They didn't have to stress about lumber at all. Yggdrasil, the giant tree, had them covered. And before long, they were racing to finish the defensive walls, stone by stone, until they were almost done. Then Riel snapped awake and started barking like crazy, and my heart jumped, because it felt like he'd just found something. But it turns out he didn't need a big explanation at all, he just had to pee. During their exploration, Riel stayed brooding, because his clairvoyance let him peer straight through the bedrock. He'll realize his skills are truly reliable when reality throws him huge piles of ores he couldn't even uncover on his own. After a few weeks, Riel suddenly turned up the energy, way more than before, blazing the way to a spot and pointing it out. And Philo and Gio stared in confusion, sure Riel was up to digging something right there. But the catch was brutal. There wasn't a single optimization light there on the spot, and that left him staring at the problem like, is this really going to work? Yeah, like that, but he was dead sure Riel had stumbled onto something. He knew that if he hit it just right, one careful strike would make it all work out. But the instant his body struck the ground, he dropped straight into a hidden cave, like the earth opened up and swallowed him whole, which was right under that spot, and that's when he stumbled onto a giant armor sprawled on the ground, alongside a sword that was 5 times his size. He finally clocked it. The thing in that armor wasn't a man at all, it was a golem, and it still didn't have its heart stone, plus the whole suit looked forged from orichalcum. But that blade wasn't just metal, it felt forged from something far tougher than anything else. He couldn't stop himself, he had to get a closer look at the sword's blade material. We swung his pickaxe down and wham, the strike ripped a brutal sound through the air. It echoed through the whole cave and blasted straight into Mappa's ears. He'll finally snap to the truth, he can't just shatter that sword, because its metal is tougher than even orichalcum. Then bam, Mappa slid in behind him like a ghost. He didn't even realize he'd arrived. Then Mappa's eyes snapped to the sword and his. His eyes went wide in pure shock, like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. And he was so overjoyed, he dropped to his knees and started worshipping it. Fuller and Heel couldn't stop staring, confused about what was happening, and how Mappa seemed way too fired up for no reason. Mappa hauled the heavy sword back up to the surface all by himself, ready to have it processed. Mappa threw himself into forging the sword, and with the other smiths backing him up, the blade started taking shape fast. But something was clearly tearing at him. Turns out the other smiths told Heel that the heating power just wasn't strong enough to melt the sword. Then Rihanna tore in on the scene, and the second she laid eyes on the sword, she froze. He'll demand her help as he grinds the sword down to melt it. He fused his magic energy with the furnace's raw power. They blasted it with flame magic, and the furnace power exploded to many times its strength. Then they shoved the sword in immediately. After the heatwork paid off, the melted material finally gushed out. Once the whole thing was finally turned into raw material, he grabbed a little piece and tested it right away. It turned out the metal was mithril, the legendary stuff the gods lost, the one everyone swore was the hardest, and it could even slay the gods themselves, while also letting magic seep into it. Heel was over the moon. He finally pulled it off, and he threw Reel a huge thanks for helping him track it down. Next, he swore Mappa could turn the mithril into the biggest weapon in the world, real soon. At last, their protective wall finished going up, and the reclaimed land now looked like a full-on fortress. Finally, it was good for something. Because they were going to clash with a legendary beast, they kept scrambling, building new plans, one after another, to bring it down too. And this right here, this was the moment Shield kicked off her first greatest battle of her life. Later that night, he finally clocked it. Elvin was the real deal. Then Rihanna crept in behind him, pressed a finger to her lips, and whispered, SHH, telling him to stay silent and watch what came next. While Reel dropped to his knees and begged for forgiveness, he apologized to Reel for what he'd said about his mother earlier. He admitted she was a terrifyingly great warrior, then begged him to keep watching, because they were about to team up and avenge his mother together. Rihanna and Heel overheard him, then everything clicked into place. Reel. He clapped his hand over his eyes, like he couldn't bear to look, which made Scream wince in pain for a second, right when it looked like everything was finally going their way. All that was left was to bet everything on Sheol's power, because if Leviathan ever showed up, it was going to decide the whole fate. After a while, the watchman hit the bells of alert, and suddenly everything felt like it could explode. He'll bolt to see what's going on, Elvin told. He told him they spotted 2 ships out on the open ocean. Then Varys slid a telescope into his hands and told him to look with his own eyes. When he peered into the telescope, the emblem of the same one stared back at him. The orcs who wiped out the Belden tribe weren't strangers at all. They were the remnants of another orc tribe, fighting for their survival. Elvin seethed, convinced that if they meant to strike the island, they'd never get the chance to take it. Out of nowhere, something huge surfaced in the ocean far off from the ships, and the moment they spotted it, they launched an all-out attack. And he'll realize the ships weren't just sailing, they were scrambling to escape from something lurking ahead. Reel started barking, and Heel snapped to attention, right on the edge of SS. Something's seriously off here. Magic energy is blasting out of the sea like it's about to explode. And what they saw next snapped the room into stunned silence. Everyone's jaw dropped in pure terror. The legendary beast Leviathan burst from the sea, and its monstrous black shadow stretched toward the heavens, so colossal it practically touched the sky, while a terrifying roar ripped through the water, sending the seas into total frenzy. The orcs on that ship braced themselves and stared down the Leviathan, refusing to break even as fear tried to swallow them. But their bullets bounced off it like they were nothing, and at this point, it felt like beating that savage beast was straight up impossible. He's desperate to save the remaining ship, and he won't let it slip away. Elvin snapped up the nerve, quickly rang the bell, and instantly grabbed everyone's attention. He barked orders at everyone, stop just standing around, and get into the exact positions you've been drilling for a whole week, because the battle that's coming is about to start. Heel worried that saving the orcs, her brutal enemy, would end up weighing Elvin down. Elvin snapped that he wasn't doing this to save the orcs. He was doing it because he thought the perfect move was to strike the Leviathan while it was locked on the ship, distracted and vulnerable. Hyle caught on fast, then turned to Fula and ordered him. He shouted the orders to everyone, evacuate to the cave, just like the plan. Fula obeyed him on the spot and warned everyone heading into battle, no matter what, don't you dare die. Hyle was all confidence, and with smiles blazing, his team surged into the fight, launching a full-on war against the beast Leviathan. Varys slipped into the shadows and started barking orders on how to build the deadly heavyweight ballista. And yanking out its arrow, the goblins team up, hands flying as they get the weapon ballista primed and ready. And that arrow, crafted in pure mithril, was Mappa's blood, sweat, and soul, forged so viciously it could punch through anything. They knocked the arrow and let it fly straight for the Leviathan. And when Leviathan surged even closer to the ship, they clocked the perfect moment, pulled back, and loosed the arrow with a deadly snap. The arrow screamed through the air at breakneck speed, right up until it was seconds from smashing into the Leviathan. The beast easily slipped past the arrow like it had nowhere to be. Cal knew it didn't matter if the cannonballs couldn't scratch it. One mithril arrow would end the thing, so Leviathan juked out of the shot at the last second. Once that arrow snagged its attention, Leviathan snapped its focus onto Sheol, right now, and when danger roared in, Heel ordered everyone to load the next arrow. As he prepared to grip the Leviathan with golems at his side, he urged Rihanna to get ready for their next deadly strategy. He shouted Golem 10 and 11 down with ice magic, then snatched 12 and 13 out of the fight using wind. Together, they unleashed a mega blizzard combo right into the Leviathan. But Leviathan wouldn't move an inch. It just kept charging straight at him with the exact same speed. They finally faced the truth. Magic wouldn't work, but they didn't stop there because they had another plan waiting, which was meant to freeze the water around it. Hyle figured it'd be totally fine if they tried that. And then it pinned him so hard he couldn't move, but just when he thought it was over, his jaw dropped. The Leviathan shattered every last chunk of ice, then slammed forward and unleashed a hyper beam. He could feel trouble brewing, so he blurted out for Golem 6 and 7, shields up, angled just right, to slam the blow aside instead of eating it straight on. Leviathan slammed forward, charging like a beast, and fired that massive blast sky-high. It blasted into the defensive line with bone-crushing power. A wall slammed into the beam, and the golems' shields, powered by shield magic, took the impact and held. They had to pour out every last ounce of strength just to hold their ground with that shield. It blasted out brutal shockwaves, rattling the entire area like the ground was about to split, just like that. Then the shield began to rip at the edges, shedding tiny fragments as the damage kept climbing higher and higher. They threw every ounce of strength they had and barely scraped through, deflecting the attack just enough to send it flying somewhere else. And it sparked a massive explosion that ripped through the sea. They were barely holding it together, and Leviathan, that name was the last thing they could afford to fear. And just like that, he surged back in toward them again. Rihanna told Elvin the heavyweight ballista was back online, and Elvin tightened his grip, ready to fire it up. The moment Heel realized something was wrong, Leviathan kept barreling straight toward them. He knew it had that kind of confidence, the kind that says it could dodge the arrow even from this close. They loosed the arrow, but this time they switched up their whole game plan, which left Leviathan so distracted that he didn't even see the arrow coming. Everyone held their breath, staring at the arrow, waiting for what it would unleash. The arrow landed cleanly and pierced the Leviathan's body, like it truly found the one spot that mattered. Leviathan never saw the arrow coming. Rihanna's hiding spell turned it invisible as it flew. Everyone erupted in excitement after landing the hit on the beast, and Elvin snapped at them to calm down, because they'd only managed it once so far. Then they lashed the arrow to a beast of a rope, spider silk braided together with steel wires, built to survive anything. He'll fire up the whole crew, stay on it, and don't you let the Leviathan get away. He snapped his breath and counted 1 to 5 as the beast dragged itself closer. As soon as it hit the marked spot, the golems lurking under the waves shot their hands up, metal wires snapping tight and pulling the whole trap into action. And slammed the beast from every side. Leviathan fought back with everything it had. And it started shredding the gears too, because that machine couldn't take much more. They snapped the command to heal, act now, and slammed another arrow into the heavyweight ballista, this time lining it up right for its head to end it for good. Now that the Leviathan was in trouble, something erupted from deep inside its scales and blasted across the area, right into the golems too. Heel's eyes went wide when he realized the sea was crawling with dozens of tiny sea stalkers. Turns out those parasites weren't just swimming around, they were clinging under Leviathan's scales the whole time, riding his giants like a secret horror. They carried a terrifying threat all on their own too, yet the parasites still shattered Golem number 1's hands. And before the sea stalkers could wreck anything else, Heel snapped orders, everyone take them down right now. Turns out there were just too many, so many that they even started crawling onto the defensive wall, and they had to fight tooth and nail so none of them could climb up. While Leviathan fought back with everything it had at the same time. And more golems crumpled to the ground right behind it. Heel never saw this coming and then out of nowhere, the horns on Leviathan's back swelled bigger, way more terrifying, like the beast was escalating in real time. They could tell it wasn't just another hit, it was something even deadlier than the ray attack from earlier, and they could feel it coming just like they figured, the horns ripped free from its body and burst outward, blasting across everything as they rained down like deadly arrows. He'll snap up a fresh shield right away and yell for everyone to dive behind him. The horns tore across the battlefield, each one packed with enough firepower to level the entire wall by itself. They barely clawed their way out alive thanks to the shield, then, just when the horn's attack seemed done for. But it wasn't playing out the way they imagined, because the Leviathan's tail was right there, looming close in front of them. It hit them out of nowhere, so fast their brains couldn't even catch up to what was happening. The beast's massive tail smashed down and obliterated everything in its path, piece by piece. Leviathan's tail slammed down, and the roar of that impact echoed all the way into the deepest parts of the cave, right where everyone had been evacuated. They flinched at every awful sound, praying the nightmare would end any second. The kids were shaking with fear, terrified they might lose, now they're back home again. Their moms just snapped back, "Don't stress, Heel's got this, he'll fix everything for sure." Leviathan's tail tore through everything like it had never even been there. And luckily, Heel got blasted straight back from the hit, flying like he'd been thrown by a cannon. He got clipped by the shell at the last second, but somehow he hit the ground safe and sound. He surged back to his feet, remembering how Golems 6 and 7 had shielded him before, and realizing he was alive because of them, thanks to them. He yelled for the others, but all he got was this awful, just a. Dust choked the air, and panic snapped in his chest as he realized something was wrong, because he couldn't hear a single soul back. While the tiny sea stalkers scaled that wall too. They spread the attack around his heel, and suddenly he had way fewer moves left. He had a bad feeling the moment the sea stalkers started creeping toward the island. So he shoved them away and blasted them back with thunderous attacks. He felt his magic power teetering on the edge of running out. And suddenly his attacks started to crumble, getting weaker by the second, like he was running out of steam. He got shoved into a corner, then yelled at Shell to bolt for it. Then Rihanna burst into the chaos, and with one swipe of her weapon, she wiped out dozens of sea stalkers in an instant. Heel let out a huge sigh of relief when he saw Rihanna was okay. She swore nothing would ever dare touch her master's heel. Relief flooded him as soon as he realized she was okay. And then Rihanna pushed in too, just to make sure he was okay. Then arrows began raining down on them from right behind their backs. Then they'll crash into the sea stalkers, and he'll flip the script and turn on them. He spun around and saw the arrows flying in, shot by the others who were desperate to protect Heel. He let out a breath of relief, seeing they were all safe too, goblins and golems included. With one single command, they slammed into the sea stalkers as they followed Princess Rihanna's lead, and slaughter as many sea stalkers as they could. Elvin blurted out sorry to Heel for showing up late, but the truth was, he was just relieved to see everyone was okay. Leviathan was at it again, tearing through the world on another brutal rampage. And even those massive golems stood no chance. One swipe from it was all it took. The beast still loomed there, towering above everything, when he finally realized the danger was right there, too close. They were in. Heel snapped that it was time to roll out their final strategy. Rihanna shot back that it was way too dangerous. He knew he had to pull it off anyway, because that plan gave him the best shot against the Leviathan, especially now that it was creeping right up near the shore. Rihanna fretted over him and clutched his hand tight, and she poured out every last drop of magic energy she had left into him, to make sure he somehow pulled off the impossible and finally defeated the Leviathan. Heel finally grabbed the reins and decided to take matters into his own hands, right now. So just as the beast was about to strike again, he shoved a hand over his mouth just in time, before the magic attack could fully kick into place. Heil purposely set out to grab Leviathan's attention, and somehow he forced the Leviathan to snap into a furious chase. Then Leviathan lost its mind, rage boiled, and it started hunting Heil for real, mowing through anything in its path, even straight across land. Heil was in Tehran, shouting at Tehran to sprint at full speed to the plan's location. Now he was trapped where nobody could save him, so he had to trust himself and push through the rest. Elvin scanned the room fast and realized he still had one more way to help. He charged over to the heavyweight ballista and yanked the rope with full force. Varys snapped a warning. Once the ballista's winch was wrecked, they couldn't haul the rope back anymore. Elvin couldn't stand by. He had to do something for Heel, even if it meant risking his life too, and that warrior pride in him refused to let him just sit back and watch everything unfold. He yanked the rope with everything he had, and Mappa jumped in beside him too. Leviathan coiled his entire body around the Heel, trapping him tight. Then boom, cannon fire erupted and rained down on the Leviathan, right as everything was closing in on him. And those shots, the orcs' ship fired them from the start, right before, right after. Then a mithril arrow came blazing in and slammed straight into one of Leviathan's eyes. Elvin teamed up with Mappa, and together they brought the whole thing to life, shot it all in the works. And now he surged forward, because the road ahead finally opened up for him. He finally burst into the exact spot he'd been plotting to trap them. So he shot his hand up exactly as planned, your signal to Riel, who could watch it from right there. Clairvoyance and a louder signal are screaming that something even bigger is coming. She slammed into the rock up ahead, right where their plan said she'd strike, and it triggered a domino chain inside the cave, stretching all the way down the passage too, leading straight to Leviathan's brutal collapse beneath the cave. The trap was so massive it could swallow a Leviathan whole. Heel knew the ballista might not be enough, so he scouted this spot and dug it right beneath the reclaimed land, ready for the beast to fall into the trap. He tore through the supporting pillars, and it was all set up to drag Leviathan down here. Now the last piece of the plan was simple. He had to face it head-on. He yanked out a mithril pickaxe like it was pure destiny. Then he scattered hundreds of rocks and stones all across the place. The crest grilled him on whether he wanted to mine, and when he said yes, it hit hard. He planned to lean on his boosted power while digging so he could use it to hunt and kill the Leviathan. Inside, the monster unleashed yet another blazing blast of magic. And he dodged it at the last second. Then he launched straight at the Leviathan, roaring to activate the Cave King's power and blast it apart. The crest got what he meant and followed his instructions without hesitation. And he drove the pickaxe forward with every ounce of power the Cave King had inside him, and forged the mithril pickaxe into the ultimate god-slaying metal. Then his crest flared brighter than ever. In the very next second, everyone above ground stared as a blinding light burst up from the earth, which was apparently smashed into existence by the shock of Heel's pickaxe attack, planted his strike straight on Leviathan's head, then smashed it to pieces. His strike slammed into the beast and hit like a perfect, devastating critical, and the shock ripped through Leviathan's entire body like lightning. It was so powerful it shattered Leviathan's entire body in one brutal crack. And that's the moment the legendary beast of the legends finally got crushed by the Cave King, Heel himself. Then he yanked the rope, hauling himself back up to the surface. But then the Leviathan let out a dying scream that blasted through the whole cave like thunder. They burst through to the surface, and the rocks around them started shaking like they had a pulse. The others yanked the rope, and it slipped in their hands, slamming him down hard as blood poured out. Blood spilled from his mouth because he'd been swallowing every last bit of that relentless noise. Then Terran snatched the rope back, hauled him to safety, and saved him all over again. Terran yanked him up in a blur. The cave was seconds from collapsing, and then Rihanna swooped in and leapt down to snatch Heel out of danger. She snagged another thread from Tarn and caught Heel midair. She grabbed his hand and demanded he hold on, because they were going to crawl out alive, no matter what. Then Heel warned her, grab him right now, and you won't make it out alive. She shook her head and told him, don't you dare quit, swearing to him they'd claw their way out alive. Then the sky cracked open again, more rocks blasted down from above them. Then boom, a colossal beast shadow slammed into view right in front of them. She jumped back in shock, but it turned out the beast wouldn't let go. Something had it trapped in its grip. It clutched them close and charged out of the cave, hauling both of them to safety. They stared at it in shock, desperate to figure out who or what was out there and why it was risking everything to save them. Then boom, an enormous boulder crashed into their path. The beast yanked the fear out of their hearts, then slammed straight through the boulder in an instant. They burst out of that cave alive. Somehow, against all odds, they made it out. And he'll corner him like, so, who were you? The beast stared in shock, realizing humans actually managed to beat Leviathan. And it turned out the beasts were actually those kobolds, watching over their highness like guardians with sharp eyes. They caught his scent and demanded, is there a baby sea? Kobold got tossed onto this island inside a box. Elvin came sprinting over, desperate to make sure he was okay. Then he spotted the kobolds, and somehow he already recognized them. They recognized Elvin and Varys by the names they used to carry, because everyone knew how their tribe had been hunted out of that land. Kobold's two guards, Ash and Hein, were the ones stuck guarding Riel. They clocked it instantly, Varys knows, and since we're only two guards, Alhamina's message had to reach him, which means the baby is here. Then Riel came sprinting up to heal, while Ash and Hein lit up with relief when Riel finally turned out okay. But when Riel finally came to heal, Ash and Hein dropped to their knees and burst out, thanking him with pure joy. When they saw that Riel was safe, relief hit them, then guilt crushed them hard because they couldn't protect her, and that felt like the worst failure of their entire lives. Heel beamed at that, but Riel couldn't wrap his head around it. He was still too young to get what any of it meant. Elvin leaned in and demanded, Ash, how in the world did you get us to this island? Ash leaned in and spilled how everything turned out. Just as they were about to go under in the sea, they finally ran out of luck after 2 brutal days adrift. And an orc pirate named Camus, from the Corvus tribe, swooped in and pulled them to safety. Then a boat came barreling toward the island, and Elvin leaned in to ask Ash if he wasn't supposed to be at the war. Ash told Camus he'd meet up with him. And right now their ship was wrecked and barely seaworthy, so sailing again felt impossible. Then the last bombardment gutted their ammo, and Elvin realized he could have had his revenge all along. With their own lives hanging in his grip, then the boat finally pulled up. Arrived on the island flanked by 2 orcs, and for a second nobody knew what to say. Then he finally snapped up and declared, I'm the Lord of Sheol Reef, and that's when everything shifted. The other orc introduced himself as Camus, the leader of the Corvus tribe, and after the wild shock of their last battle, he couldn't believe his eyes when he realized this island packed with monsters was actually ruled by a human. Camus dwarfed Heel. Its size was 3 times bigger, and Heel was already massive for an orc. Camus snapped to El's presence, and Elvin leaned in to tell him, yeah, my name has been changed now. He made it crystal clear, just because they saved him didn't mean he'd forgotten they were the ones who wrecked his hometown, and now he was dying to figure out how they were going to get their revenge on the orcs. And Camus shot back that meeting each other wasn't random at all, it had to be fate. Camus lowered his sword, dropped to one knee, and offered up his own life. He felt like the Corvus tribe's fate was on his shoulders, so he begged them to spare his people, offering his own head in return. Elvin could see it the moment you made up your mind. Then the orc behind Camus snapped back, saying it was Camus' fault at all. Turns out the traitor Camus silenced him. He begged them not to disgrace themselves anymore, then pleaded for them to let him die right there like that. Heel heard him and Elvin immediately barked. Everyone shut up and listened to Heel. Heel cut into Camus and said, no matter what you choose, I'm not letting this slide. Tell me what really happened. And then he stepped back to let the other orcs talk. Then he told him the truth. Once they had an orc named Claude, Camus's second-in-command and the real traitor, who bided his time until their boss left on an expedition, then hit their main base, aiming to grab part of the fleet. It all kicked off because Claude couldn't stand his boss's gentle, spineless tactics, so he recruited some orcs, promising them bigger power and more fame, all for a fortune. Seeing so many people back Claude was brutal, and the moment the news hit, he slammed into action, rushing to reclaim the fleet, but Claude had already gone completely off the rails. Heel realized it. Claude was the one who went and attacked the Belden tribe. While Claude and the others were still locked in battle, Leviathan burst into the chaos right in the middle of it. Heel finally clocked that the half-bodied orcs and the corpses that washed up on his island weren't random at all. They were Claude's crew. Elvin could feel how wrong it was. Orcs weren't supposed to be the chivalrous kind, but one thing never changed. They still smashed his hometown to pieces. Kamu then snapped that the split tearing his tribe apart was his fault, and guilt crushed him. He couldn't stand that the flag he inherited from his ancestors had been defiled. Then Elvin snapped that he should have kept his people close, and if he had, the Belden tribe's home never would have been hit. Elvin yanked his sword free and demanded, "You're taking responsibility for this. Now, answer me." And Camus nodded along, keeping his promise, thinking it'd be totally fine to get shut down by Elvin. He'll charge in to take Elvin down, but everyone's about to get shocked by what happens next. He swung his sword hard, but the blow still didn't take Camus down. He shoved Camus' hands to his sword, then dared him into a duel, right there as the Corvus tribe's leader. They agreed to settle it in a duel and everyone leaned in from the sidelines, desperate to see how it all would blow up. Hill couldn't shake the worry for Elvin, because his opponent wasn't just any orc, it was the leader of them all. So we figured, at the very least, he needed to grab a shield. But Rihanna jumped in and stopped him cold, making sure he couldn't mess with the match. He didn't even try to stop it, he just locked in and watched every second. Camus lined in and told Elvin he was ready to give his life to the Belden tribe. But now that it was a duel, he swore he'd go in full force, no mercy, no holding back. Elvin loved that feeling, and with full confidence burning in his chest, he didn't hold back for a second. Goblins, heels, Rihanna, everyone, locked eyes on the duel as it was about to explode into action. Elvin swung an axe tied to a pulling rope, while Camus brandished his sword, then the duel exploded into motion. They didn't waste a single heartbeat, both of them went for it right away. They clashed instantly, trading blows, and Camus slid out of Elvin's axe like it was nothing, clean dodge, and slammed the first hit into his left shoulder. Then he landed another crushing swing, and Elvin's axe slipped right out of his grip. He was stunned by how quickly it all was happening. Then Elvin grabbed his weapon once more, ready to slam into another brutal bout. Camus basically said, "No one's ever dodged my blade this badly before." He kept swinging in, carving out tiny cuts with every hit. Slashes across different elven body parts. Namu was ridiculously good at what she did, and Fula couldn't stop worrying about her own father. Then Elvin flipped the script, ramped his attack speed back up, and lunged his weapon behind Camus this time. Camus caught the moment he tried to strike from behind, and he already had a way to stop it. He snatched the axe's swing out of the air and sent it flying off. He barely adjusted midair, then twisted his sword and launched it backward at the elven fighter. Elvin's getting hit from both sides. His axe and Camus' sword are both coming in with deadly attacks. Then he pulled a move nobody saw coming, and the crowd went wild in total shock. He purposely let Camus' sword slice straight through his hand, to leave him completely unable to pull off a single sword technique, and then, right after, he set his sights on shattering it. But the whole battle detonated into a brutal clash of raw power. Camus warned Elvin not to trust that look, because beneath it all, Elvin was still an orc. And in every fight, those orcs usually mauled goblins in grappling. As the fight cranked up for both of them, he started crowding Elvin with relentless pressure, and it felt like the tide was turning. Elvin shot back that he didn't care what you said, because when the time came, he'd back it up with a joke about his strength, trusting in himself all the way. Even though those orcs were way stronger than any ordinary goblin, Elvin stood alone as the Belden tribe's greatest warrior. When his warrior crest lit up, it surged through him, cranking his physical strength to a whole new level. Despite his huge frame and heavy weight, he still managed to lift Camus up with raw strength, somehow. Camus was left totally stunned. He couldn't even process it as a goblin grabbed him and lifted him off the ground. Then Elvin slammed Camus' body into the dirt with a brutal impact. He spun the wrong way, and blood gushed from his mouth. He clenched his bare hands around that blade and smashed his sword to pieces. Then the duel finally ended. The goblins stood tall, cheering for their fearless leader, Elvin, and rushed right over to make sure they were okay. Elvin just laughed and said the orc had a tank for a skull, so Camus would be totally fine. And just like that, Camus snapped awake and confessed he'd lost. He demanded the elf finish it right now. Elvin shot back out of nowhere. From this moment on, Camus' life is mine. No way you're tossing it away like that. Camus was left totally stunned, like her whole world just stopped. Then Elvin stepped forward, declared himself the winner in front of everyone, and bragged that he'd crushed the Corvus tribe, sending the goblins into pure joy. Then he marched up, owned up to it, and apologized to Heel for leaping forward and showing off like a total fool. Heel was fine, he already knew what Elvin was like, so he shot him a real heartfelt thank you. Hill told Camus he could stay on the island for a bit and get his ship fully repaired. He ordered him to pull his whole tribe together. And Camus straight up accepted that he'd do it for sure, no messing around, and definitely no causing any trouble. Then Elvin clocked Fula sneaking up. Before he could react, she smashed a kick into him, which made him howl in pain, and he shot back, "What are you doing?" And she closed the distance, lined in, and pressed her head against his. She shot him a worried look and reminded him she'd told him, "Don't push yourself like that again, not ever." With everything finally settled, Camus stepped forward and declared the orcs would be under his care for now, then demanded the others greet him. More than 100 Corvus tribe members showed up as his guests, and the sheer weight of the day crushed him, worry gnawing at his nerves while exhaustion hit hard. Ash and Haney were determined to obey the Queen's orders, so they moved right in and started serving Riel's foster parents. They watched the Belden tribe get his title, and once they saw that honor land in their enemies' hands, they demanded the same thing from him too. He agreed, but he shot back that he only grants it so others can trigger the power of his crest, and it wasn't some sign that he'd be giving orders to any subordinate. He slapped a name on him and called him Ash to Ashton, Hina to the top of the heights, and told them to guard their comrades from here on out. He figured things were about to get hectic fast, and Varys promised he'd carve out brand new living spaces for everyone who needed them. Then out of nowhere, a brutal headache slammed into him, because he was still running on fumes from earlier. And yeah, turns out he'd got a fever too. Diana promised she'd take him to his room, and Varys nodded, saying he'd deal with the rest. Heel brushed it off like it was nothing, but she hit back, "You can't be serious, you're probably wiped out." So she ignored him completely and stormed into his lab, dragging him right along with her. And yeah, talk about humiliating. Camus and Hines could feel the tension in the air, but she was so clueless she just ignored it and marched straight to Heel's room. Heel knew she was right, he needed rest, so she shut everything else down and handed it to Varys, keeping all the focus on his recovery. After that, Varys couldn't stop his mind from racing about what to do with the enormous corpse of Leviathan. Then Mappa barreled in and devoured a chunk of it. Mappa burst into happy dancing, because that meat was so insanely delicious it practically stole his breath. Varys then bellowed, calling out Golem 10 and Golem 11, and demanded they turn the cave under the reclaimed land into a giant freezer, and then, to everyone's shock, the Leviathan ended up as their dinner. He knew he'd have to haul the damaged golems out of the sea too. Then the orcs barged in and demanded Varys let them step in, because they had boats and knew every dangerous inch of those waters. Varys nodded and tossed them ropes so they could bind the golems tight. While Heel dreamed of bridging the gap between orcs and goblins, even with their ugly history, knowing it might take time to make it happen. Thanks to orichalcum shielding, the golems' heart stones stayed intact, so he grinned and decided they could rebuild the golems and unleash them again. Before any of it, Heel knew one thing: he had to get moving, and while he geared up, Rihanna stayed right there, cooking food for him like a lifeline. While still holding onto his own careful plan, he juggled everything else he might need help with too. She sat him down, demanded he start eating right, and then spoon-fed him herself, one bite at a time. He loved being taken care of like that, and you could see the relief hit him, like her kindness was healing him right on the spot. After all that, the medicine Varys brewed from Yggdrasil finally kicked in, and it pushed his recovery into overdrive. And he told Rihanna, "Don't you worry, I'll be back on my feet in no time." Rihanna told him it wouldn't be a problem at all, then smiled and assured him it felt great to just rest like this every once in a while. She loved doting on him, and he ate up every worry and kindness she gave him like it was everything. But he refused to sit still. He wouldn't let himself rest while everyone else was still grinding. He couldn't wait to dive back into mining. Down beneath the caves, goblins hauling rocks felt it first, heat creeping in around their mining spot like something was waking up. And right as they were driving the mining deeper, tragedy slammed into them out of nowhere, and they watched. Spotted water gushing up from the very spot he'd just dug. But the tragedy they feared flipped into pure blessing, because it led them straight to a hot spring. The next day, Heel looked back on everything, how he'd battled the sea to reach an island on a dead reef, pulled survivors from a wrecked ship, and crushed a legendary beast. Next, and even after he clawed his way through his own brutal share of hardships, he found himself trapped in the single toughest situation he'd ever faced. It was him sharing the same steamy hot spring as Rihanna, while she smiled and called it lovely, and he was squirming the whole time. It all kicked off a week ago, right out of nowhere. On the day they unearthed the hot spring during his recovery, he fought to sit up, snatched his pickaxe, and tried to swing it, but he still couldn't. He couldn't even lift his arms. His whole body screamed in pain. Then Rihanna showed up and found him writhing and screaming, because every time he moved, when he wasn't supposed to, it tore into him. She shot him another warning to take it easy, and he immediately apologized back, like he couldn't breathe until she heard him out. Camus taunted him by labeling him a sinful man just to keep his girl spiraling with worry, and he couldn't believe it. Other people were here too. Then Camus claimed it was pure chance. He just happened to be passing by when Rihanna started giving him a full tour of the island. Then Rihanna handed Heel his battered clothes from the last fight, and she used spider silk to mend them, stronger than ever, and when it finally held, he turned to Renaa and thanked her, like it meant the world. Ashton realized the island wasn't finished with him yet. Surprises still hid around every corner. At first, from his eyes, it looked like just a tiny reef, but beneath it sprawled massive underground tunnels, top-tier smithing gear, and even Camus, who trekked across countless lands, had never laid eyes on an Yggdrasil like that. Heel was thrilled to hear that, and he was determined to keep making this island a better home, so he told them, "Go ahead, if something catches your eye, speak up and check it out." Camus agreed without hesitation, and leaned in and told Heel they'd do everything they could to get accepted as islanders, soon. Even the goblins hesitated over how to steer the orcs, because Camus knew this kind of thing takes time. Heel reassured him it'd be fine because they already got along with humans like him, so they'd figure it out sooner than he'd think. Camus felt his kindness in his chest, and it warmed him, and demanded to know how he built such a powerful dominion just by treating the monsters with kindness. Heel flashed him a warning that this was gonna take forever to explain, then revealed the truth. He was born in Sandfels, and the Shield Reef was just a piece of that world. Sandfel's name grabbed Camus' attention, then Fuller swooped in and warned him they were dealing with some real trouble. He leaned in and asked what it was, and she shot back the answer without hesitation. He told him about the crazy burst of hot water raging up from underground. He marched there with everyone else because he had to see it with his own eyes. Then Varys leaned in and asked how he was doing health-wise, and he said he felt good enough to move around, while praising how amazing the hot spring had been for them. Elvin couldn't stop grinning. He was thrilled to finally have a hot spring because he absolutely adored it. Fuller stayed icy calm and shot him a straight question. So what happens when that hot spring floods the cave? The goblins who mined it spilled the whole story to him, and now the water wasn't stopping at all. He'll corner Fulla and ask if she knows any advice for solving problems like this, but she'll admit she's clueless because she's never had to deal with anything like it back in her hometown. Heil paused for a second, then put his first mission front and center, checking whether that hot spring water was actually safe. Out of nowhere, MAPPA showed up, and right in the middle of the heat, decided to soak in the hot spring all by himself. Elvin was fuming because he wanted to go first, but Varys leaned in and told Hel the water looked safe since Mappa hadn't run into any problems. Then he even promised to check it again later, and Hel felt genuinely relieved by their help. Then he went straight to MAPPA, begging them to tell him if they had any way to haul this water out to the outside. Varys said this would be brutal, because everyone usually rides the mountain's water down from the top, but in this cave, the hot spring sits deep inside, completely changing the rules. Then MAPPA snapped with an idea while kicking back to relax. Then he bolted straight to the blacksmith without wasting a second. He sketched fresh designs, ran them straight to Heel, and told him he wanted the workshop fired up to forge stone molds, and then turn iron ore into the supplies they needed. Right away, they dove into the work, and Heel yanked the ores straight out of his inventory. Camus gaped at how it all worked and watched, up close, a whole crew pounding out those iron pipes, straight from the molds, while everyone stayed frantically busy. Then MAPA went and tweaked golem numbers 8 and 9. And now they can blast out a blazing line of fire magic straight from their arms. So you could weld the pipes shut by melting their edges until they fused together. This was the kickoff of a huge mission, bringing that scorching hot water up to the surface. And Mappa cooked up brand new devices, blasting water out of the cave like a raging flood. He refused to waste a single drop, so he ordered Camus and the rest to keep tending that huge public bath they were building on the surface. He couldn't just sit back, he wanted to jump in and help with the project, even if it was just a little. But Rihanna wouldn't let him, so he had to back off and force everyone else to pick up the slack. After a whole week of non-stop work, the construction was finally finished. Now all that was left was hauling the hot water up to the surface. He loved how the massive bathhouse finally turned out, and Kamu couldn't stop wondering if the water would really rise here, because he'd never seen anything like these giant pipes and machines actually run before. After that, MAPPA locked in the machines, and the underground device hummed to life as Golem number 10 powered it with wind magic. MAPA flipped the switch, and the machine groaned to life, grinding forward at a slow, ominous pace. Everyone's buzzing with excitement, waiting for the water to pour out of that statue linked with, until the pipes and machines finally came alive, like something in there refused to wake up at first. Then MAPPA slammed their hand down hard on it, and the machine suddenly blasted scorching hot water from its statue mouth. Heel couldn't stop grinning at how everything was turning out, and Fulla and Elvin were practically bouncing with excitement to sprint straight to the hot spring. So you smiled, talked politely to Elvin, and told him he'd get to be the first one to bathe. And they could drag it out, but right before he finished his sentence, Elvin launched a kick, and he went flying straight into the bath. Camus froze at the sudden drop, and Elvin snapped him off, then barked at the others to get ready for the bath. He told them to clean up first, don't rush in like some orc from the hills, but the truth hit hard, he got kicked. Then the goblins and orcs piled into the hot spring together, finally soaking away the heat and letting out a huge wave of relief. And just like that, it washed away every ounce of their exhaustion. Elvin shoved a grin in Camus' face and teased him, calling him weak for being wiped out from just this little work. You got offended just because someone complimented his gorgeous body. Then another orc leaned in and told Elvin to ask Camus about what was going on with his body. He'd start flaunting that gorgeous body because pride practically burned in his chest. While Astan and Hinas were busy caring for Riel, they finally learned the shocking truth. Riel wasn't a prince at all, he was a princess all along, and this time. Heel pulled up and instantly grinned. Everyone was living their best life, and the whole place felt electric. Then he overheard Elvin snapping at Fulla, "Don't you dare swim in those hot springs," which made Heel snap his focus onto a brand new, critical issue. Turns out he'd totally forgotten to split the baths for men and women. Then it hit him, nobody here was even thinking about it, because both guys and girls were just soaking in that hot bath like it was completely normal. He went wide-eyed at the sight of the women nude, then demanded of Varys why he didn't keep them locked apart. Then, on top of everything, he also had to clock that one more person was about to show up around here. Rihanna, just her, was in the bath, casually soaking and moving around when she slid over, offered to scrub his back. And right then, his inner thoughts started spiraling out of control. It leaves him torn, staring at the opening, wondering if he should weaponize it and seize the upper hand, or just swallow it and accept their ways. But his nerves wouldn't let him just leave it alone. He bolted from there, tossing out dizzy excuses as fast as he could, and she just stood there, totally lost about how it all flipped so suddenly. He headed into the cave with that Shell at his side, even though he could have gone bathing with everyone else. He told Shell he wanted to go with everyone, but the moment he even thought it, guilt hit him, because even if they never realized it, he knew he'd be leading them on. He sprinted straight to the source of the hot spring, where the heat first erupted from the ground, and stumbled on some brand new, piping hot water right there. He slipped into the bath and sank back, feeling the stress and exhaustion drain out of him like a wave. He stared at those machines and knew, deep down, Mappa had to be a genius. Then Rihanna showed up and caught him there, soaking in the bath all by himself. He demanded to know why she was still there, and she shot back that she couldn't walk away because she refused to leave him alone. She figured Heel just wanted a quiet bath, somewhere calm, no noise, no interruptions. And she lined in, asking if she could jump in with him too. And that's how he got himself trapped in the kind of danger he swore was the worst thing he could have ever stumbled into. His nerves were shredded, like his dignity and pride were on the line, while Renas stayed totally calm, nudged him to check the shiny rock in front of them, and swore it looked just like a star. He tried to choke down his panic by diving into his inventory and staring through every item like it could steady his nerves. Then Rihanna leaned in and told him she had something huge to talk about, and it sent him spiraling inside. He kept replaying the moment, because when they finally had privacy, he had no idea what she was about to unleash. She finally cut in, telling him she still couldn't untangle the Belden tribe's feelings toward the orcs. She couldn't shake the guilt, even knowing Kamu wasn't to blame, because those goblins were terrified, their homes wrecked, and that fear would crawl into the deepest corner of their hearts. Still, she couldn't help but smile. Belden and Corvus finally teamed up, shared meals side by side, and even soaked together in the hot springs. He said it, and the moment it landed, joy lit up her face like fireworks. He told her straight up not to apologize for that, because he'd lived it himself. He knew exactly how brutally hard it is to rip yourself free from your past. He begged her to check out their island, where goblins, slimes, cave spiders, golems, kobolds, a naked old man, and even a human all lived side by side, and somehow they were actually getting along great. Relief flooded her the moment she heard it, then she leaned into his back and dozed off before she even realized it. He got hit with it so fast that it threw him off, and panic slammed into his chest so hard he felt like he had to bolt. Then it hit him. Rihanna had been grinding just as hard since the Leviathan fight, running on fumes that day like he was, but still pushing through, working for his recovery and helping everyone nonstop. He was so grateful to her that it hit him right in the chest. He thanked her with every ounce of sincerity, then stayed perfectly still, careful not to wake her up. The moment she snapped awake, she rushed out an apology for nodding off like that. He'd been there way too long. Dizziness slammed into him, and his blood started pounding straight into his head. Then, once he finally got a hot spring bath, relief hit like a wave. The second he realized he was finally back to his old self, it hit like a wave. He was fully healed. He was so overjoyed he got to mine again that tears slipped out, and Fula and Rihanna lit up, cheering him on. Then Camus showed up and beamed, congratulating him for finally making a full recovery. And he leaned in and asked, "Got a minute? I need to talk to you." They trekked into the open area, gulping in that fresh air like it was freedom. And Camus shoved Gila's scroll into Gila's hands like a surprise gift, meant to celebrate his recovery. The moment Gil cracked it open, he froze, because inside was a diagram of a harbor. He grilled him, "So you're the one who made it." And the guy shot back that Varys ordered it, because they knew that reclaimed land could turn into the harbor's perfect base. Camus also let slip that Gil dreamed of trading with the outside world one day, but Camus said he had to rip Belden's ships apart first, because there wasn't any lumber. Camus lined in and told him, "You can use the Corvus ship." Once they were done patching the damage Leviathan wrecked at the bottom, they still had one more problem: getting a real harbor and dock built. He got so lost in the designs that he turned them into something way more exceptional. He'll realize it's not just good, it could outshine the kingdom's facilities. That's when Camus finally clocked it. Gil was straight from Sandfellas. Gil bragged that he was the 17th Prince of Sandfels, then admitted he'd bombed so hard he got thrown out of the country. And ever since he started spilling his past to Rihanna, talking about it has felt easier and easier. About it, you saw how much it hurt, and honestly, you couldn't help but feel bad for him. Then Gil leaned in and told him, "You're staying on this island now. No humans come here, so I want you to help me make it better." He marched over to Varys and Mappa to hash out the construction plans, but Camus still wasn't buying his plans yet. But after seeing Gil's ruthless construction methods and how fast he threw up the walls, while he poured that power into their bodies and filled the land inside them, he stared in shock, and Elvin leaned in like it was a secret. His boss could do a whole lot asterisk, proving without a doubt that the King of Cavecrest was truly in a league of his own. He figured this was the way to make a perfect harbor rise from the sea. Then he told him he could only lay the foundation, and demanded Camus step in to supervise the construction. Varys even backed it. Camus was the only person who could pull off this job. So Camus grinned and happily agreed to build an amazing harbor. Then he hooks him up with some golems too, straight-up helpers for the job. The golems from 1 to 7, those Leviathan wiped out earlier, got rebuilt at last, and now they're back, fresh and ready to be thrown into action. With every working part finally in place, the only thing left was to dig up even more stone to build the harbor. So after what felt like forever, he shoved his way back into the mines. And he couldn't help but grin again. He was finally mining once more. Fuller stepped in to congratulate him, but she clocked it. He wasn't pulling out the Mithril Isaacs at all. He told her he still had it, but for now he wanted to swing something smaller and way easier to use. Then Astan and Hinas came sprinting over, begging Riel to stay put in a safer zone. But Riel kept causing trouble. She just wouldn't stop trying to roam wherever she pleased, so he planned to ask them to watch her for a bit. Then Fula shot back that if Riel couldn't help them, Highness would have to step in and work instead. Hinas nodded without hesitation and marched off to mine. Then Fula started teasing him. "So you're good with weapons, or do you need an ice axe too?" Now he's scrambling to tell Fula, "Hey, cut it out with the teasing before it gets worse." Then Astan waved it off and told him, "It's fine, don't stress that part, we'll just thank F." She kept it cool with them, even though they'd only just joined, and then she sat Hina's down and showed him exactly how to mine. Then Hines bounced back fast, strong as ever, and he caught the mining rhythm in no time, to the point where he was already getting the hang of it. He didn't waste time. Before long, he was going head-to-head with Fula. Heel was thrilled to see their miner ranks climbing fast, and he couldn't help but feel the rush right along with them. Then Ashton snapped out of it and decided he'd better run back to work too. Then Riel tapped into clairvoyance and pointed straight at the exact spot. As Highness and Fula happily dug into the mines, pulling in oars after oars, then, suddenly, Ashton shouted to Heel, telling him he'd stumbled onto something seriously weird. Hines and Fula froze in shock as Ashton surged ahead of them, powered by the reel. Then they all marched over together and stumbled onto a mysterious box that looked like it was carved from orichalcum, so Full couldn't help wondering if it was the coffin accord sized to fit, while Ashton didn't buy her explanation one bit. Then he spotted another stone and sprinted to his ore guide to have it checked. That fresh stone wasn't just any rock, it was a transport stone that let you instantly jump between transport stones, and how far you could go depended on how big it was. He figured out that if the exact same stone ever showed up somewhere else, they could use it to jump straight over there. Fuller then spotted a hollow patch that matched the stone he'd been holding in his hands right now, same shape, same curve. Then he stuffs it into the hole, and it fits like it was made for it perfectly. The moment the hollow box lit up, everyone froze in shock. It turns out the teleporter, powered by the stone, was the real key, and now it's finally activated. Fulla couldn't stop wondering where they could possibly go from right there. And Ashton's worry hit hard. He couldn't shake the question of where they were headed next. They kicked around what to do next, maybe send a golem, or try something else entirely, but they refused to jump into it carelessly. While MAPPA dove straight for the device and got teleported on the spot. Right when everyone realized Mappa had vanished from the device. Everyone froze in shock. He decided to chase Mappa and ordered everyone to wait right there, but Ashton shot forward, stopped him, and volunteered to go instead. Then Riel fired off clairvoyance and showed the whole crowd exactly where Mappa was. And once they saw it, they couldn't wait, so they rushed to get there fast. Heel was convinced he could head there right now since it didn't look dangerous, and he told Shell to call Varys over too. Then Riel shot straight into the teleporter. Right after him, Fola followed instantly. Then Ashton and Heinies piled in too. Every inch of the device got packed, leaving zero space inside, and Hal said they didn't have to rush to go all at once, but nobody dared to step out, and they were trapped right there too. Then bam, every single one of them got yanked through space and teleported all at the same time. In the very next second, they got ripped out of the other teleporter and slammed onto the far side of the device. They finally arrived, and the library was absolutely massive. Hundreds of thousands of books sprawled everywhere their eyes could land. They stared in disbelief, like their eyes couldn't possibly be seeing this place, and they couldn't stop asking themselves if they were still trapped in Sheol. He swore they were still trapped on the island, pointing out how everything looked exactly like the other rooms he'd found, stone changes everywhere, and golems lurking in the same way. The place was absolutely terrifying, and massive too, because there was nobody around at all, just them, alone in the dark. Then Highness leaned in and told Heel, Mappa's right up ahead. He urged them to leave immediately, and when he nodded, he demanded, no, insisted, that he lead the way, but after he trailed Hainas for a while, they stumbled up to the scene, and there was Mappa, sprawled on the ground, blood pooling all around him. He'll tear off to MAPPA, convinced something might have attacked him. But he snapped to the truth fast, because the mapper freaking just got a nosebleed from watching it. A filthy book packed with hundreds of wildly inappropriate pictures inside. Mappa shot up in a flash, and his eyes landed on a book right in front of him, like the story was about to start. And he had the inside scoop, on the crest of the king of the cave. He'll beg Mappa to speed up, but Mappa couldn't even read. He didn't even blink. He tossed that book aside and sprinted to catch up with everyone else. He tore back to where they'd started, and there it was. Shell had pulled everyone through safely, too. He leaned in and asked Varys if there were any really good books lying around nearby. But Varys couldn't make heads or tails of the words etched inside them, and he couldn't heal a single one either. Camus practically fizzed with excitement, because things finally started looking wildly adventurous. After spotting a teleportation device, a giant library, and the eerie traces of an unknown civilization still sleeping on Zeoil Island, he couldn't shake the feeling that a treasure had to be hiding there too. He pushed them to dig deeper around the island, and he agreed, but the place was still falling apart in spots, so he warned everyone, don't go charging at golems. Right after that, they burst into the library and started digging through everything they could find. Fulla called him over at last, telling him she'd stumbled across a book packed with pictures. When he finally turned to look, they locked eyes on a crazy detailed drawing of a massive town. Heel stared at the town and couldn't shake the feeling he'd seen those buildings somewhere before. Rian leaned in and said the mountain in the picture looked almost exactly like the shield. Even though its size didn't match Shield, it was way more beautiful than anything she'd seen so far. Then he'll finally clock it, Shell staring hard at whatever's got her attention. He tracked down Shell's sight and boom, found a massive statue of a woman looming there. Rihanna gushed that the statue was absolutely gorgeous, like it was carved straight from a goddess. And Heel couldn't shake the feeling that the statue was meant to honor the one people in Shield worshipped generations ago. He was straight up stunned to see it, because even the kingdom had zero records of ruins like these. Then he couldn't stop wondering if more ruins were lurking somewhere in Sheol, waiting to be discovered. After tearing through the library's nooks and crannies, they hauled everything together and rushed back to grab a few heartstones and magic stones pulled from the golem's remains, because this place still felt like an unsolved mystery. So Varys jumped at the chance to dig into some books and crack their secrets. Then, as they kept talking, the sound that bounced back from the wall behind them didn't just return, it felt wrong, and they all noticed it. She tapped the wall just to be sure, and yep, it hit the spot because she was right. She yelled for healing, then told him there was a gap behind the wall waiting to be used. But after they tore through the whole area searching, they still couldn't spot a single opening to get inside. Fuller asked her, should we just dig into this and see what we pull up? Then he'll track down the perfect spot to dig, pointed out to Fula, and Fula carefully brings the ice axe down to it. And her gut feeling was right. She rushed over to see what was inside. And he'll rush after her, determined to check things for himself too. Surprisingly, he suddenly turned around and congratulated Fuller, because this hidden play was exactly what nobody saw coming. The whole place got wrecked by the change stones, and just as things went crazy, 3 of them appeared all at once. Fuller could still remember how, back then, she'd always wake up before everyone else. First, she bolted straight to the cave to dig for ore. With golem number 15 in tow, she was so hyped for mining that everyone else couldn't even keep up. And she even ended up being the very last one out of those tunnels. Hill couldn't help but worry, watching her get so totally swallowed by the act of mining. But no matter what, she still had one thing she was chasing, no excuses, no backing down. After that, the change stone was finally brought up again. Then everyone shot back to the surface and started blasting it back and forth in discussion, because it was the very first time they'd ever heard about the change stone. So Rihanna stepped in and confirmed it was the real deal, because she herself had evolved through that stone right here. They couldn't wrap their heads around it. Rihanna used to be a regular goblin. And Camus had zero clue, until it hit him that Rihanna was secretly the Belldown princess all along. Camus blurted out that he'd been mulling it over the whole time. Rihanna was an elf princess who'd run off with Heel, because her ears looked straight out of a fantasy tale, and the second Heel and Rihanna heard it, they froze, then their drinks went flying everywhere. And then he blurted it out loud, forcing them all to freeze. Commuters kept going on, insisting it was weird they were still reacting like that. Then he dives back into the whole stone-changing topic, because he never expected to suddenly find 3 of them. Fula got one of them, because she was the one who found them first, then hunted for them for so long. Then he lined in and told Varys, you can use one too. But Varys couldn't shake the worry that there might be someone even better suited to use it. He told him he was certain, and after thinking it through, he said leaving the Sorcerer King crest unused would be a total waste for them. Camus nearly lost it when he heard this. Back when the Sorcerer King was at his peak, he mastered the greatest sorcery-type crest, and Aston basically begged for the same magic from Varys, because if he could do it too, the whole thing would be straight-up legendary. And Elvin hit Varys with the truth. He's already in the final stretch of his life too, but if he grabs a new body, he'll stay healthy for way longer. Fula and Rihanna refused to let anything happen to Varys. And then Varys admitted he'd been mulling over the idea of finally using his own crest. So he nodded at once and told Heel to let him use a single changed stone. They'd finally agreed on it, just one switched stone left, and yet nobody in sight seemed ready to evolve. Ashton and Hina's were totally fine staying exactly like that, because their crests let them power up without needing to change a thing. Then Varys lined in and quizzed Camus, asking if he carried a crest too. Camus shot back that he had a crest. Then he revealed it, the Sea Dragon crest, a beast of power that could command the water itself, but there was a catch. Only aquatic monsters could wield it, so Camus was left with zero chance to use his crest. Camus made it brutally clear he didn't want to evolve just to get the power. Elvin told him that crest would unlock more power, and for a sailor it'd be pure gold too, while Camus snapped back that it meant nothing since he did. He hated that those aquatic monsters always showed up with slimy scales, and he refused to trade his current gorgeous body for something gross, because they couldn't force him either. Figuring out how to hold off on the chainstone for later. Right then they grabbed the changed stones and moved immediately. No hesitation, they were going first, and she turned to Rihanna and demanded, "So what am I supposed to do?" Then she leaned in and told her, "Just imagine who you want to become, and wish with everything you've got for the changed stone." She squeezed her eyes shut and started vividly imagining the kind of person she wanted to become. She couldn't stop thinking about how powerless she felt, and it always ended the same way: someone swooped in to save her. That left a sting in her chest, like she was being left behind by them, until today when it all changed, because she was finally about to evolve. Her power surges, more fierce than ever, because she's Elvin's daughter, the great warrior's blood. Everyone was stunned, because they were watching evolution happen for the very first time, right in front of their eyes. Then she slammed Mappa's eyes shut to heal them, and turned to Rihanna beside her, urging her to do her part next. Fulla finally evolved, and suddenly her line of sight soared higher than it ever had before. Now she couldn't shake the question, did it even work? Rihanna shot it into action fast. Rihanna whipped over to shield her body, showing up fully. How her evolution flips everything. She's powered up by a shell, and suddenly she's transformed into a mirror. Fulla burst with joy. She finally evolved the way she'd always dreamed of, and Rihanna lit her up with congratulations. And Elvin's face lit up when he saw his daughter had grown. Then he pressed her for answers. "Are you stronger now?" And Fulla grinned and said, "Yeah, in magic I am." Then she hit a wall. How in the world was she supposed to test if her magic actually worked? Hill stepped in, offered to examine her, and swore he could clearly see the magic energy streaming from her, so she finally understood she could learn how to use magic right now. Fulla couldn't believe it. She evolved, and her skin stayed exactly the same. While Rihanna looked like a real human, she still got flustered, because her wish was to be irresistibly attractive so she could heal. So she warned them it might change from person to person. Varys wondered if he could evolve into something new too, so he slammed the chainstone in next and triggered his own evolution. But just when everyone expected a change, Vera stayed exactly the same. Camus couldn't shake the question, why on earth wouldn't Varys change? Then Varys finally clocked it. Something was way different this time than it ever was before. That twist hit him like a punch, and his staff clattered to the ground. Varys couldn't believe it. After years of crushing back pain, it was finally gone, and he felt healed. Heel was thrilled for him, but the question gnawed at him, what was going on with his crest. Then he finally clocked it after one quick glance. The Sorcery King crest exploded with a wild surge of magical power, bursting out like it had a life of its own. Then Varys decided to put his crest to the test. And being the Sorcery King, he could feel it in his bones. He'd be able to unleash any magic spell he wanted. So he kicked things off by firing off a fire spell to test his magic, which swallowed a huge stretch of land in roaring flames. No one saw that simple spell coming, because it hits harder than anyone could have imagined. Incredible, then they blinked, and what they saw next blew them away even more. Varys' body got ripped into a younger, stronger form, and he admitted the Sorcery King was beyond amazing, but even now, he couldn't quite lock in and master that magic energy yet. Everyone's jaw dropped when they saw the massive change. Elvin lined in and demanded Varys, was it truly him? Varys admitted he was shaking with emotion, because he'd never once dreamed he'd get to wield magic one day, and in that moment, he felt like a whole new person. Then Heel leaned in and told him, "Your magic is insane," and even his appearance had been transformed too. Varys finally got what he was saying only when he locked eyes with his own reflection in the mirror. He stared at the mirror and froze, because what he saw left him completely dumbfounded. But just as fast as it came, he snapped back to his old self, and then he crashed, blacking out cold. After he finally woke up, Heel told Varys what he'd heard. King Crest, the sorcerer, could twist his own body into the form that eats magic energy the most efficiently. He only knew that much because nobody in the kingdom would ever show him their real power, so when he finally heard this, Varys couldn't help but feel relieved. And he couldn't wait to dig even deeper into it. Heel was thrilled to help, and he was sure that with Varys' sheer dedication, he'd conquer the Sorcery King all on his own. Then Fulla finally showed up, pointed at him, and fired off a question. "So, does my new outfit look amazing?" He leaned in and praised her new outfit as straight-up awesome, and she grinned and told him the princess had busted her tail to craft it just for her. After that, she marched right back to the beginning and started mining again. And Heel told her, go on, use those magic crystals anytime you spot them. He caught up with them, plus, he figured it'd be fine, because they'd been clawing up fewer magic crystals lately. And Rena and he were already massively stronger, with Varys' magic packing a punch all by itself. Then he went on to, I've got an idea to teach her how magic energy transforms, step by step, right in front of her. She aimed to summon fire and wind through magical circles, and to do it, she'd have to crack the secret letters needed to write the spells. All of them felt a little overwhelmed, but she couldn't wait to push forward. She poured every ounce of her time into relentless magic training. And her intuition wasn't just good, it caught everything fast, like it could read the world at a glance. She burst out with magic attacks right away, unleashing them at breakneck speed. But she was still way off from hitting their mark. She was still. Relief hit him like a rush. He grabbed the chance to use them and sprang forward, jumping with pure happiness. Elvin's nerves spiked over her awful aim when it clobbered Mappa, but he just grinned and told her it was pretty solid for a first try. She truly put in the work, and Heel told Elvin he admired her, especially the way she carried her father's strength. Elvin admitted he'd be laughing right now if that were true, but she told him she'd always drilled things over and over, so she'd never fall behind her friends. He breaks it down by telling her story, how she kept grinding after losing to Princess Nay. Game of Stones, which smashed her hopes until frustration hit and she broke into tears, and that's when Heel finally understood what it truly meant too, that it also meant that. That Fula only evolved after it, just because the princess had evolved first. And she hated losing, especially when it was against a friend. Heel was thrilled to finally have a friend who could spar with her and push her to the limit. But right then, jealousy sparked in his chest, because he'd never, ever had a friend like that before. Meanwhile, work on harbor kicked into high gear and never slowed down. They hauled the ship into the port, then kicked off the repairs the second it touched down. First, they slammed together a dock for the harbor so they could speed ship repairs, and Camus couldn't wait to get back, because tons of Corvus families were out there, waiting and hiding. Hyle told him not to fret about finishing the harbor, and that they'd sail the moment the ship was repaired. Camus practically lit up with gratitude for his kindness. He leaned in and told him, let's start trading soon, so while you wait, figure out what you're gonna trade with. A few other orcs leaned in and told Heel to hand over the sea trade, swearing they'd back him with a fat stash of items. Heel practically couldn't stand it anymore. He was bursting with excitement, ready to shove off and set sail as soon as possible. He couldn't stop smiling, because he finally got the chance to start trading with the outside world. So the orcs decided he might be able to kick things off by selling gems from the Sheol, and they asked if they could also strip something from Yggdrasil, but Heel shut it down and said they'd hammer it out later. Then out of nowhere, a monstrous shadow surfaced in the sea right by the docks. The orcs were getting the ship fixed with brutal efficiency, and they were so close, repairs were basically done. They were so restless from weeks without sailing that they figured, finally, it was time to get back to their main job. A dark shadow in the water crept up behind them, inch by inch, closing in fast. Then it burst out of the water, shocking the orcs into chaos. This snake-like monster slithered into view so suddenly that every last one of them erupted in panic. I heard the noise. Then he whipped his head toward them, trying to figure out what kind of monster they were. While that snake-like monster wrecked the harbor, smash by smash, leaving destruction everywhere it slithered. And the orcs were bolting away from it like their lives depended on it. Right on the nick of time, Camus burst in and smashed the monster with a brutal kick. And he launched it flying straight back like it had been hit by a cannon. He was grinding through his job to protect the harbor, and he was. He couldn't shake the disappointment when he saw the orcs stampeding backward in pure panic, terrified of that monster. He told them get ready, because the counterattack is about to explode. But every last one of them was terrified of that monster, because it looked exactly like Leviathan to their eyes. Camus never imagined this could happen to them, and he snapped for everyone to look closer, because this monster was way smaller than Leviathan. Then those snake-like monsters crawled out again and slammed into the terrified orcs. Mappa showed up right on time and handed Camus his brand new sword, because his last one got wrecked in that duel earlier. Camus grabbed his brand new sword and carved through the monster from the gap like it was nothing. He stared in awe at how razor-sharp the orichalcum sword was, then turned and praised Mappa for his brilliant handiwork. Heel stormed into the harbor, demanding to know what monster Camus was hiding, but Camus snapped back and stopped him cold, warning that one step closer could get him killed. Even with its head cut clean off, the monster's severed part still jerked back to life and rose again. Then Camus lined in and warned everyone else. This monster was an evil moray. More and more of those snake-like monsters burst up from the surface. But the very next second, the monster revealed its secret, one single, solid main body. And those snake things, they were just its arms. Camus said they had to smash its main body, or it would just keep snapping back to life, over and over fast. The monster tore its arm back on, then surged forward again, and this time it attacked with even more of those deadly snake arms. Then Fula unleashed a fiery fire attack, and it got slammed by the flames. She rushed in to help, but the moment she laid eyes on that snake, she froze. Seeing the arm regenerate was so disgusting that she couldn't bring herself to watch. So she spun on her heels and bolted away from it. Then Heel sprinted her to a safer spot, and she demanded, "What do we do now?" because the monster was closing in. Camus snapped that they had to smash the main body. Only its arms blocked the shot, and he'd normally wipe it out with cannons, but no one dared risk blasting the harbor. Meanwhile, Varys slipped behind the monster's back, while the others kept it busy and pulled its attention away. Then he slammed his sorcery, King Crest down and then he turned it into magic, using that special state. Varys whipped out water magic and yanked the air into curling ropes of water, too, to bind every arm of the monster tight, and the moment he carved out an opening. He motioned for a heel, then snapped at Fula to team up with him and blast lightning magic together. And together they slam the monster with everything they've got, right when it bursts apart into pieces. They were grinning like they'd won, because they handled the whole mess cleanly, no damage to the harbor at all. And Heel couldn't help but grin when he saw just how far Varys and Fula had surged in the blink of an eye after revolving. Meanwhile, everyone else cheered her progress, while Elvin couldn't shake this nagging feeling. Something else was brewing in the background, and it worried him. Apparently, the orcs were so ashamed that, because Camus never expected the fear of Leviathan to sink so deep into their hearts, leaving a hole that couldn't be filled. He finally snapped to the truth. He botched the whole crew's mindset, and now they can't even sail the ocean with a setup like this. He tried to talk to them, but they wouldn't listen, because they were convinced there wasn't just one Leviathan, and that another one was out there too. Varys nodded. One more round couldn't hurt. Fula snapped that the odds were razor-thin, because this legendary beast wasn't just another fight. Elvin reckoned the Corvus tribe still had it even tougher, because fear kept yanking their courage back every time they tried to move. And Varys told Camus that if he wanted to reach his people fast, he could grab recruits from the Belden tribe too, only for Camus to refuse hard, insisting those Belden folks couldn't handle a patched-up ship. And here's the real punchline. The Corvus were the sea's own people, so if they couldn't sail, their pride would get crushed for good. Heel and the others could tell. He was crushed inside, like it had hit his soul. And Rihanna jumped in, urging them to heal if they could forge a ship so unbreakable that even Leviathan couldn't smash it, and that would finally calm the Corvus tribe's fears. Hyle loved the idea and immediately pictured the ship's hull wrapped in solid metal armor. Camus warned him, forget it, metal hulls are heavy, and out on the sea they make every movement a fight. Fuller said they could try Orkelcom since it was so light, but Varys shut that down fast, saying they wouldn't be able to pull it off. Orch alchem was ridiculously rare, and they simply couldn't get enough of it to coat the giant ship hull. Then Mappa stormed in with a wild idea, scraped something into the dirt, and stared at what he'd drawn. And right there, like a nightmare-given form, the drawing of the Leviathan stared back. There was one more twist too, another creature that looked just like the Leviathan. Varys finally grasped what Mappa was trying to get across, and they rushed to the spot where the dead Leviathan's body lay. He'll feel it again, how insane it is to actually beat something this powerful. Leviathan's scales shrugged off cannon blasts, and even magic slid off useless. Everything the normal tools tried just couldn't scratch it. So he pulled out his mithril Isaacs, and the moment the Cave King's power hit, everything changed. He tore the scales right off the Leviathan himself. Its scales were way lighter than they looked, and he had a strong feeling that was exactly why this huge beast could dart and twist with lightning-fast agility. And later, he starts putting those scales to work, processing them for what's next. Mappa forged tools from mithril, melting the arrowheads they'd used earlier against the Leviathan. Mappa and Camus huddled up to figure out what else needed fixing beyond the outside, and then they started plotting a full redesign of the infrastructure. They aimed to beef up the scales to the max, so it would stay tough, but still let them sail like pros. And that's how it all began, building a ship meant to be wrapped in orichalcum, with the inner boards and the mast forged from Yggdrasil branches, and even the armor hammered out of Leviathan scales. With everything stacked on the table, they set their sights on building a ship for the Corvus tribe. As they stared straight at the massive shipbuilding towering over them, that evening Heel lined in and told Camus. Dinner was almost here, and he promised, "I'll be there in a minute." Camus stood over the graves of their fallen comrades, and he watched as the others worked with such respect that Camus felt he already had more than enough reasons to thank him. Camus kicked things off by telling Heel about what happened nearly 100 years ago. When one man finally shattered the endless wars with humans and other tribes, he dragged the defeated orcs to a place with no way out, then led them straight to the sea. Camus, an orc hero of the Corvus tribe, single-handedly forged a massive fleet that could even clash with a whole nation's army. And after that, the Corvus tribe kept passing that name from one leader to the next, generation after generation. But when it was Camus' turn, the anger hit hard, because traitors had slipped into his tribe, and the worst part was he couldn't even rally his people to sail out to the sea again. He'll feel bad for him, then, before the moment can breathe, it all turns into calm. Tom Yu said he wanted to get strong, so strong he could stand up for everyone else. He stared ahead with steel in his gaze, determined to never disgrace the proud name of the Camus. The next day, the shipbuilding was finally finished, so they tore open the watergate. With Golem help in the mix, they smashed that brand new ship and sent it crashing into the seas. It looked tougher than any other ship. Its surface was carved with Leviathan scales, so it didn't just sail like a vessel, it looked like a beast all on its own. Fula and Ashton stared at the ship in awe, but Heel wasn't thinking about wonder, something else was worrying him. And Rihanna could tell the Corvus people were on edge, like they were bracing for something any second. Camus rallied his crew, telling them they'd be diving into test training next, so he made sure everyone got pumped and felt ready. He clocked it right away. Something about their behavior still felt off, and it sent a chill down his spine. He faced him, shut his eyes tight, and locked in, because he was fully certain about the move he'd planned with Heel, and nodded to him, urging him to kick it off. Bill trusted Camus to take things from here, and he, Golem 16, hit the battlefield and come out right now. People kept staring, dying to know what he was up to. Diving beneath the surface, I saw a colossal shadow looming through the water like it owned the depths, which burst up out of the water, right in front of the Corvus tribe's brand new ship. The crew's watchers spotted something up ahead and screamed the warning. And the crew members couldn't stop asking, was it a monster lurking in the dark? Golem number 16 finally slid out of the shadows, and it looked for all the world like a snake-like monster ready to strike. That's exactly what the Corvus tribe feared most, because it looked just like Leviathan to them, and then, boom, 16 slammed them with its magic attack. Their ship swallowed the magic attack like it was nothing, shaking once before standing strong. While the crew was in pure panic, convinced the 16 was a Leviathan, they raced toward a terrified Cume and demanded they get out of there, fast. Camus stepped in fast, and just like that, the chaos settled. He told them the ship didn't even blink after an attack like that, then snapped, "Stay calm, stare your opponent down." When they finally turn around and really get a good look at it, they stared at it and realized it was made of stone. Meanwhile, out on the land, everyone stared in disbelief. Why was that golem shaped like Leviathan, and why was it charging straight at them? He demanded they stay out of it completely. Camus fired up his crew and kicked off a mock battle, an all-out showdown meant to mimic the one with the Leviathan. The crew panicked that they couldn't possibly bring down something that massive. Then Camus snapped them back to reality, reminding them they used to wear pride like armor, invincible sea warriors. And after they'd been wiped out by Leviathan without even scratching it, he finally understood exactly why fear had gotten into their bones. But even with a changed stone clenched in his hand, he made it crystal clear. He wasn't backing down, and he was ready to challenge the sea again. Others snapped their eyes to the stone sitting in his hands. And Camus bolted forward, leapt into the water, and told everyone goodbye like he was tearing off his old perfect body. Then he ordered them to watch him like a hawk. Right as the new Camus debuted, the Corvus tribe's leader stepped into the spotlight. He dove straight into the water, and right as he surfaced, the stone's glow blazed like his wish just ignited. Everyone froze when they saw it, and the big question hit: what would happen next? Then bam, you break the surface and emerge from the sea, like you've been summoned from the deep. He'd finally evolved into an Aquaman, and it was real. And now, boom, he finally had the sea dragon crest at his command. He geared up to battle Golem number 16 and blasted through the water at full speed, locking onto it. He blasted it with a storm of rays, but Camus slid out of the way effortlessly, blasting them with pure water power. He tore across the water like it was flying magic under his feet. Even Camus couldn't believe it, watching the sea dragon twist and control the water around him like it was his own power. Now he was locked in, ready to smash straight into the fate of 16 head-on. So he pushed closer, only to find that, being carved from rock, it shrugged off attacks like nothing. He dodged every one of 16th's strikes while hunting for an opening to slam a hit back. All the other orcs watched their boss tear into the enemy alone, like he refused help. Rihanna and Heel got seriously worried, and the dread hit them hard as they started thinking. Even a fully evolved Camus could still get crushed by that golem. Then Camus stopped the strike dead in its tracks, catching it with his bare hands. Even though he got shoved back in the water, the golem slammed straight toward him. Then the other orcs from the crew surged in and brought their ship right alongside yours, closing the distance fast. They ordered the armory to open fire on the golem. No way they were letting their boss go toe-to-toe alone. Cannons blasted and arrowheads rained down as they fought to shove the golem back, until the chaos cracked it open for Camus. Camus' heart practically soared when he saw their spirits were back up again. So he dove underwater, planning his next strike, and unleashed the Crest Sea Dragon's power too. He swirls the air into a raging tornado, right around the golem numbered 16, which gulped it down in one unstoppable bite, even with that massive size. And once 16 slipped inside, the tornado swallowed everything. Camus moved wherever he wanted, but the thing's actions were trapped and limited because it was charging straight at a golem that stood no chance, praying that this heel slip would get corrected later on. So he yanked out his sword, wrapped it in swirling water energy, and morphed the blade into a spinning drill. Camus snapped his sword into shape and forged it into a deadly trident drill. He drove the blade into 16, and the impact detonated everything. 16 shattered completely. Everyone finally exhaled with relief when Camus crushed the golem, despite the fact it was just a mock battle. The orcs were overflowing with pride for their captain, because he chose to trade his old body for their lives. After all that chaos finally cooled off, everyone packed it up and headed back to the harbor. Camus and the other orcs were greeted with open arms by Heel. He looked Camus dead in the eyes and bragged about how insanely incredible he'd been out there. But Camus swore he could pull it off because his crew had his back. He could practically feel their doubts and distrust in the air, like they didn't believe in his strength or in the crew that stood with him. He threw a heartfelt apology to his whole crew, then leaned in and asked, "You still up for conquering the seas with me?" The orcs practically bounced after him, bragging that he never even had to ask, because in their eyes he was always their boss. Elvin then taunted Camus, rubbing salt in the wound about having to surrender the beautiful body he'd been bragging about. Then Camus yanked off his shirt and flexed his brand new, shining body. And in his eyes, that was downright handsome, like he'd just awakened to a whole new level of beauty. With the perfect ship and the perfect crew finally in place, he was sure their voyage would soar from here on out. And once he hears it, he'll nod and go along with it too. After that, Camus ripped through a full week testing and tweaking their ship, while Heel and Varys argued over exactly what they wanted to trade. And the day before you set sail, the Corvus tribe threw a massive farewell party, drinking, laughing, and devouring the feast like it was the last night on Earth. And when night finally fell and everything went quiet, Heel charged over to the ship with Rihanna and Shell, itching to get a first-hand look up close. And he asked her if she was into ships, and he told her it just wasn't like that, but he's always been obsessed with the wild outside world they can finally reach with those ships. Rihanna asked if he'd ever want to sail with her someday, and he admitted he hadn't even dared to think that far ahead. But even then, it was still just a fantasy, ever since back in the kingdom, where he couldn't find his place no matter how hard he tried. But once he finally landed a place to live with all of them in Shield, it turned into his real home, and that made Rihanna light up with happiness. Then Riel clocked it. Someone was on the ship, posted up on the watch like they were hunting for something. Then Camus dropped down, sure Riel's eyes couldn't afford to miss him. He'll shoot him an apology for boarding without warning him, but Camus shrugs it off, saying this ship is partly his too. So yeah, this place always welcomed him, because he'd only ever approved of one human. Camus leaned in and told him they had to talk, and he instantly wondered what could be so serious for her to sound like that. Camus snapped into the conversation, telling him it was all about his homeland. The kingdom of Sandfalls was ruled by his father. He's going to drag him back in and grill him for every scrap of what he knows about his homeland, the kingdom of Sand Falls. That's when Camus hit him with a gut punch. The Claude faction that betrayed him wasn't some random enemy. they were hired by the royal family of Sanfelis. He froze in pure shock at the news, and he couldn't wrap his head around it at first, because the kingdom of Sanfelis absolutely hated the monster. Come, you finally apologize for keeping quiet about it for so long. But when they hunted Claude down, they stumbled on a lone survivor, clinging to life amid the wreckage the Leviathan left behind. In his final breath, he blurted out the truth about their mission: to crush the monster tribes that threaten the kingdom, promises of massive rewards, plus the full backing of the strongest nation across the entire Burlian continent. Even though the plan was to hire Camus, Claude nixed it fast. He already knew Camus would never agree. Heel was left reeling, because it wasn't some random order at all. It was his own father calling the shots, and now he had to claw out the reason behind it. Camus then leaned in and told Heel, straight up, that the kingdom of Sanfelis itself. His old country blew up during his father's reign, massive expansions, until they became the biggest power on the whole continent, so bringing in the Corvus tribe was almost certainly just another move to squeeze their influence even wider. And just like that, he couldn't shake another worry. He grilled Heil again, demanding to know if he really got expelled, and Heil nodded, but Camus leaned in and grilled him. So is that really true? Because Sheil and the Cave King came charging after them, and then that underground treasure trove and the crest that could dig it all up without effort felt way too perfect, like fate was quietly smashing the pieces together, leaving no room for anything to be just a coincidence. Once he heard that, Hell couldn't help but wonder, had his father already figured out the Cave King's power and what was hiding under the ground in that shield? But that would have felt weird, because there was no reason to stay silent about the power of his crest. He figured that if he really meant to build up the island, he'd have brought more people with him. So you turn to him and say, maybe that's why, maybe the real reason is. Whatever was trapped and silent inside Hill's father's shield, he refused to let it ever see the light of day. Rihanna instantly clocked it. Kama was pointing straight at the underground ruins. You gotta hear this. He even started out doubting you, too, and he thought you were just pretending not to know what's going on to mess with him. But once he'd lived here, he finally understood. He was nothing like the others. So he trusted him, reached out, and slapped his hand on Heel's shoulder, telling him to keep it locked in his. In his mind, he was still the rightful prince of Sanfelis, and Zio was still part of his empire. One day, he'll have to stand against his own country and fight to keep Sheol safe from them. He'd finally get what Kamu was saying, and then he snapped back to what he'd forgotten. He still had those ties to the Sandfalls, and he still had his father, even after they sent him away. The next day, Camus and the Corvus tribe hoisted their sails and cut loose, leaving behind warm, kind wishes for everyone from the shield. Now they were finally heading out to reunite with their families, still hiding back there, and on top of that, he got number 16 patched up, sent it along with Camus, and made sure their whole journey stayed safe. Then he gathered everyone and spilled every detail about the chat he'd had with Camus. He apologized to them, because the real mastermind behind the attacks on the Belden and Tibris tribes was none other than the royal family of Sanfelis. Elvin told him, "You don't need to apologize, you're not to blame," and they both pushed to talk right now about what they should do next. Varys sank into deep thought, because he knew those contacts from his own country could spell real trouble. Elvin was so confident he sent anyone who messed with monsters straight flying into this place, and Varys shot him a warning, doing that could spark a full-out war. And it left Hyle terrified, knowing he'd dragged them into something truly awful. Elvin grabbed his attention and told him point-blank to stop feeling that way because S.H.I.E.L.D. was basically everyone's home now, no debate. After hearing that, his eyes snapped open, and he knew there was zero time to stay timid, so he stepped forward and demanded everyone's help for what came next. Everyone else relaxed because his cheerful vibe made them feel safe. And Varys leaned in and told him this was the whole point. Maybe they shipped him here so they could squeeze the resources first, and then, once the timing was right, they'd come back and trade with him. Which meant monsters and humans could finally share the same world, not because they truly understood each other, but because they both wanted the same thing. It would flood his country with massive riches, and prove Heel's reign over Sheol in this land was truly justified. But even then, one scary thought still lingered. Sandfels could still step in and mess everything up. Ashton asked if Varys was basically telling them they had to grow strong enough to negotiate with the kingdom, and Varys nodded in agreement. Fula and Rihanna each had their own simple plans to push the island even further. Ashton started mapping out their negotiation, but it all hinged on what the Sandfels were really trying to pull. Heel figured it out. Maybe this was exactly what Camus and Rihanna had been warning him about earlier. Maybe the truth is buried in the underground ruins of the shield, right there in that secret civilization. Varys admitted they still knew nothing about the Sheol, and he begged that he'd finally crack the library books. Then it hit him, every idea slammed into place, and in the end, he finally cooked up one plan they could all pull off. To hunt down the most elite miners and stack them within their ranks. He recruits the Sheol Ruins excavation crew, Heel, Fula, the kobolds, plus the slimes and cave spiders. Fuller teased him, bragging it was the same crew that always did the mining, but he didn't care about that. He wanted to spark a whole new motivation in them, planting a fresh kind of fire in their minds. Rihanna packed portable rations for everyone and told him to be back before dinner, then he'll thank her for saving the day. With everything finally locked in, he geared up and plunged right back into excavating the fresh new ruins. He decided he had to dig into the mystery of Sheol, because only then would he know exactly what his father was trying to claim as his own. Fuller shot him a question: did he even have a plan for digging deeper into the ruins? And he told her, we'll start by. First, scour the already excavated ruins, but tread lightly, don't dig too deep and risk shattering anything important. So they chased that magic energy leaking from any buried ruins, and watched like hawks for any reaction from Riel. For a whole week, they kept digging with total focus, pushing deeper and deeper with every step. But for some reason, they found nothing new at all. He even hunted down the old passages between the rooms and came up empty. Then Ashton explained how they'd blasted straight to the library, using a teleportation device. He could also let them hop between the ruins they'd already uncovered, because there were never any real hallways linking them, only teleportation devices. And those tools, they probably got lost later. Heel dared to think it might work, and couldn't stop wondering what they'd even use as a reference before they dug deeper. Ashton told him dinner was right around the corner, so they'd better head back, one step at a time. Or Rihanna's gonna rip into them for being late. Heel swallowed the worry and told everyone, that's it, we're done for today. But he realized that Reel was gone, nowhere, not a trace. Everyone's eyes snapped around the room, convinced that Reel thinking she'd slipped off again on her own. He'll hear frantic scratching, and the second he follows the noise. He finally made it to Riel, and panic hit him when he saw blood soaking into Riel's paw. He told her to calm down, but Riel wouldn't stop. Fila said it looked brutal and demanded to know what happened to her. Heel told her Riel looked like she was itching to dig into the spot right in front of them, and before anyone could ask why, Fula was already grabbing a shovel and starting to dig. After she drove her ice axe into the target and landed the perfect strike, she, Ashton, and Haines rolled in together, along with Heel. We all froze. Turns out the horror wasn't gone, it was left behind. Beneath the cave's shadows, you could still see bird bones buried deep inside. Then he saw Reel jab his finger at an egg, like it was the dead bird's last heartbeat. But the thing was fossilized. He figured the corpse had been buried for so long it slowly got turned to stone. And he scrambled to explain it for Reel. But Reel refused to leave the egg behind. He was determined to protect it at any cost. But Heel and Ashton were totally thrown off, like, what do they do next? Then she realized this could crush her later, so Rihanna took action, so they could grab the egg and carry it with them. Then she snatched the egg and strapped a harness onto Reel's back, built to carry the egg right there too. Back then it looked adorable in real life, so he'd keep going. Heel asked if that egg felt heavy, and she just smiled, totally fine, even thrilled to be carrying it around. After that, Riel refused to let go of the petrified egg. He kept it right by his side, even when he finally fell asleep. Heel started to feel like maybe, just maybe, he was about to hatch because Riel cared about it so much, but he couldn't shake the dread that maybe, just maybe, this dream wouldn't even be possible. Even while they slept, it looked like the eggs were still alive, like they might twitch awake any second. The next day they dug again, and Highness suddenly hit something strange, so he grabbed Heel and said it looked like a brand new discovery. But right where he dug, an eerie, wrong kind of sound crawled up, and still, when he tried to listen closely, that spot gave him nothing at all. Neither could lie past it. Still, Highness insisted, I've got crazy good hearing, even among the Tybris tribe. So he was absolutely certain something about it was wrong and unnatural, but he just couldn't find the words to explain it. He tried to tell them, look, there's a smooth stretch ahead, no wobbles, no surprises, and Reel was out cold too, so they had no proof, so Heel decided to dig right there, because it was the smartest move they could make. They fired back to Hina's while digging, listening like hawks to make sure they stayed on the right path, pushing forward for a while, until Heel finally caught the water's rushing sound too. He shut his eyes, then dug into the direction the sound was coming from. And when he finally looked closer, he realized there was a hollow space sitting right behind it. Right when he was about to lunge forward, Taran shot her web and slammed it to his heel, stopping him cold. He jolted back in surprise, then realized Taran had made the right move, because when he turned, he spotted himself on a raised ledge with. He shoved forward without hesitation and shot a reel thanks to Taran for the help. He spotted a giant tower-like pillar up ahead, and from its very top it kept blasting water nonstop. It was 100% man-made, and that's why Heinz swore it felt unnatural. Then they tracked down even more ruins and hit Patert. He stared at the pillar like, how far down does this thing go? But it was so deep even Ashton couldn't spot the bottom with his razor-sharp optimized eyes. Then Ashton leaned in and spotted the water blasting out of the pillar's surface. No pipes, no hidden outlet, nothing. He'll spot that bright blue stone, and it's the thing pumping out the water. And he ordered Taran to get that stone wedged into the pillar. Taran snapped her spider web out again, and they ripped one of the blue stones straight off the pillar. And after he stared it down with the Cage King crest in his sights, he finally figured out the spring stone's the real source, pouring out water through raw, magical energy. He stared in disbelief at what could pull this off, and it hit him. This meant they could get fresh water anywhere, as long as they had it. Ashton stared into the underground shadows, trying to figure out where the water was even coming from. So he told them they could reach the other ruins if they just followed the water's pull, and the moment it clicked, he knew his plan was right, so he headed down. But then Hina's caught a new sound in the air, and this time, it meant something was coming. He heard digging again, right nearby, and he whipped his finger toward the wall where the noise was coming from. He leaned in, then felt it, raw magical energy pulsing out of that wall. So everything that burst out of that wall was packed with magic energy, and it instantly screamed its presence, waking everyone else up. The mysterious digging source closed in on them, faster and louder with every second. Heel could practically feel the overwhelming magic pulsing from this mysterious creation. Then it finally burst out after digging its way straight through the wall. A colossal shadow loomed over them, and everyone's mind raced. What on earth was it? Heel was sure it could be the legendary dragon, so Hina's kept his guard up and never blinked. Then that mysterious creature roared at Heel, and the others too, seeing them as the underground people. But out of nowhere, that mysterious creature slipped hard, then toppled down the ridge in a brutal tumble. He yells for help, then wastes no time. Taran fires a spider web to catch the creature and keep it from dropping. Heel, Ashton, and Highness all lunged to save it, then the weight crushed their hopes. And at this rate, it could finally collapse, crushing everything beneath it and dragging them down with it. He begged them to hang on, just for a second. Then he pushed farther away, fired up his crest powers, and started breaking down rocks into something new, using their process, step by step, to nail the watchers on the wall, right under the mysterious creature. Meanwhile, Fulla and the others clamped onto the spider rope, no way they were letting go. But the dragon was fine, those scaffolders down below were holding it steady, so Heel barked at it to climb the rock stakes. And Fulla couldn't believe they saved the dragon on pure instinct, then her fear hit like a truck, wondering if it would snap them up the second it woke. But the whole crowd went tense and lost, hearts racing as the dragon clawed its way upward, rising higher and higher. Dragon leaned in and demanded to know if Heel and the others were the real owners of these underground ruins, which totally blindsided them because they were thinking the exact same thing about the dragon. Then they hauled him up to the surface, and he dug into the food like it was heaven because he'd been starving, saving every bite for ages. He finally learned the dragon's name, Royden, and it turns out he's a real earth dragon straight up. Harris still couldn't wrap his head around it. He was actually about to see a legendary dragon, the kind people only whispered about in stories. Fulla acted like she'd heard the legend too, but when the real dragon finally showed up, it looked nothing like what she pictured. He's gonna corner Roydan and demand to know if those underground ruins were his. Roydan snapped back that he wasn't from around here at all, then said he'd sailed in from the Elto continent, and everyone in the room stared like that was impossible. Roydan leaned in and told them his homeland was a red-hot inferno, volcanoes blasting magma like rivers, and territorial dragons battling there nonstop. He asked if the Elto continent was close, and Roydan grinned, saying he'd drilled through the ocean floor, headed straight east for a month, and landed here. Heel nearly choked on his own breath when he heard that Roydan had dug up the ocean's bottom, and Roydan admitted he'd been terrified at first because he'd never seen people like them. Then Roydan thanked him for saving him earlier. Meanwhile, Heel seethed over losing the digging scale, and then watched Roydan slip away too. Keep going, make them realize they might actually think he's talking right to them. But really, he wasn't using words at all. He blasted his message straight through telepathy, right into the mind. He'll ask if he can read hearts too, but it is exactly that, more like something close enough to feel similar. Roydon could feel the exact thoughts of the people he wanted to reach, and somehow he understood every word like it was spoken right in his head. And then boom, every single word Roydon thought got translated straight into their heads, so they could talk to each other without a single language problem. Fuller couldn't stop himself from wondering, was telepathy real magic, or was it some kind of crest power? Roydon leaned in and told her, I don't know magic or crests, but as an earth dragon, I used to blast my thoughts through my horn. Heel and Varys stared hard at the horn, and then it hit them. That's exactly where the magic was being gathered in Roydon. Of course they expected it. He was an ancient dragon, and that alone screamed strange powers, but they still had no idea. After that, Roydon leaned in and said he was dying to know about the. A massive tree loomed behind them, and they demanded to know, was it Yggdrasil? Roydon said he'd known that tree for ages, and that it was even more majestic in person than any story could have prepared him for. If he really believed a freak thing like this tree could exist, then those other rumors he'd heard had to be real too, because this couldn't just be some fairy tale anymore. He leaned in and demanded to know if there was a continent nearby called Paradise. Heel wasn't buying it, but Roydon leaned in and said he'd heard it was a continent way out east, where humans and monsters clash, and every kind of race lives together in a place packed with culture, nature, and wild beauty. Roydon then clocked it. This wasn't some massive landmass at all. It was a tiny island, and it totally matched the rumors he'd been hearing. And he'll wonder if the burly on the continent is what they mean. Rihanna's got doubts about that too. Roydon started to doubt it, and then Varys snapped, so you're hunting for a new place to move. Roydon shot him down and admitted his real goal was totally different. And it hit me linking up with Heel, and the others might have been pure luck, the kind fate hands you right when you need it. He called everyone in, then dropped his basket onto the ground and yelled, look at this. They showed up to see what the heck he'd been talking about. Roydon snapped the lock open on the basket, promising them a jaw-dropping stash of rare goods from Elto, so far away it sounded impossible. Roydon, yeah, the traveling merchant, introduced himself again, then leaned in and begged them to check out his mind-blowing wares. Heel never saw Roydon coming, because Roydon wasn't a soldier at all, he was a merchant. Roydon admitted his business in Elto was collapsing from all the non-stop fighting, so he packed up and pushed everything into a fresh new start in Sheol. He pulled out dozens of brand new items, and the real shock, Roydon's basket could swallow them all with ease. Roydon explained that it was a compression basket made from a Yajigan lizard's stomach, one that squeezed anything you tossed in so it could hold as much as you wanted, and the best part was that a bunch of the treasures looked gorgeous too, since they were all crafted from dragon-grade materials. He told them the vase was carved from ground-up scales, the knife was forged from nails, and every other piece was stitched together from top-shelf dragon materials. So Heel finally understood why she'd never seen a single one before, because dragons are so rare they might as well be mythical. Roydon then healed the dragon eggs, fire dragon eggs, and wyvern eggs alike. They were both flying dragons, icy frost clung to them, so Varys demanded to know why that ice was there. Roydon told them straight up, the whole point was to save the eggs so they could be boiled and eaten later, and Heel was totally stunned, because to Roydon, they were never anything more than food. And he insisted it was totally normal, so normal in fact, that dragons even treat other dragons' bodies like resources. They could warm those eggs and hatch the dragons anytime they wanted, and once it happens, he'll ask Roydon if the newly hatched ones will cling to them. Roydon agreed, and Fula explained that dragons treat the first person they see like a parent, so to help them heal, they had to raise one, and then they'd finally learn how to fly. So Heel shoved Roydon a demand and said he'd take the egg, then hit him with the question, how much would you pay for it? Roydon then jabbed a finger at Yggdrasil and asked, can I take a few saplings from it? Elto had rotted into a wasteland, but he swore Yggdrasil could turn it lush again, just like the old days, when Yggdrasil once filled the land until most of it went extinct. He was ready to plant them there. Once the volcano finally went quiet, Rihanna couldn't stop smiling, because she knew Roydon was ready to breathe life back into his home. But the truth was way more surprising. He just wanted to rake in profits later and sell those saplings like any real merchant, right on schedule. After that, he grabbed the saplings, and just like that, Mappa 2 handed over a dragon egg plus a ton of other stuff. Study. Roydon threw in a little extra for his thanks, right after he got the food earlier, and handed him a package made from the same material as the compression basket, stuffed with rocks and dirt he dug up along the road, and Heel nearly burst with relief, because that dirt would be perfect for expanding their fields. Roydon grinned to himself, convinced Heel was about to come back again and again as a regular customer. After that, Roydon crashed for the night, then promised he'd swing by again, and nobody saw it coming. Someone else stepped in and became the shield's first business partner, not Camus. He finally realized there was still a whole world out there, places like Elto with dragons, and he couldn't stop wondering how many civilizations were scattered just like that, including the one he belonged to. He couldn't stop wondering what was hiding under that shield, so he raced back to the exact spot where he first met Roydon and picked up their search through the ruins. He looked at that waterfall pouring from the pillar, spring stones and all, and thought, fine, let's ride the stream, then followed the rushing water straight to the ruin's secrets. He realized he'd have to rely on Terran to make it down that cliff alive. Ashton insisted he'd have zero trouble heading down alone. Right after that, Rihanna burst onto their investigation team, buzzing with excitement. And she thanked Heel for letting her tag, along as he tore into the mystery of Sheol's underground depths. Ashton leaned in and told him, I'm going first, now follow me, and that was the only order. And bolted out of there right away. Heel just stared in shock like, wow, I've got to hand it to them, and then it was Highness's turn to step up. He grabbed Fula and Riel and dragged them along with him, right where. Heel and Riene decided to team up and make their way down with Terran's help. Rihanna was right in his face, and his nerves started buzzing like crazy. But right now, he couldn't afford to let anything pull his focus. Before they even came knocking for the investigation earlier. He'll get ready by tending his tools like a pro. Rihanna spotted him, and he grinned as he told her he'd learned how to take care of his tools from Mappa, because his ice axe was gleaming like crazy now. She leaned in and asked him straight up if he was worried about what the investigation into the new ruins would uncover. He blurted out that he was dying to know what his father was really up to, and that the whole idea also scared the hell out of him, because he honestly couldn't imagine what his dad was thinking since he'd never even tried to understand him. He couldn't even recall ever speaking to him, except for those rare moments when they traded polite words or his father's strict orders. And after that, crickets, he never heard a single thing from him again, because in that royal court, his father's words were law. So he figured he'd be furious if it turned out he was digging up the very thing his father had been pushing for all this time. Rihanna wrapped him in comfort and, eyes burning with resolve, told him to go rip the secrets of Sheol open and find out exactly what his father had been chasing. His resolve returned, blazing hotter than ever. And when the urge to dig hit him, he realized that even after he turned his back on his father and his kingdom, something inside still wouldn't let go. He finally turned toward them as he plunged down the cliff in Tehran, pushing forward into the next stage of his hunt for the shield. As they dropped downward, Tarin clung to her spider web like it was a lifeline, and just a few meters below, a faint glow flickered into view. Then they dropped down fast, straight to the bottom, like a huge half-dome was cradling them all around. With the canals swallowing that water, everything rushing down from above cascaded into motion. Rihanna took one look around and realized time had chewed this place up badly, and Heel couldn't help thinking they'd be better off if the road ahead hadn't been wrecked, because now. He couldn't stop wondering where everyone else had vanished. Then Fuller shouted, Heel, from the other side of the pillar, and told him they'd found a canal that plunged even deeper. She pointed the way, and when he looked up, Ashton was standing right there too, while Highness sat inside the canal, straining to hear what waited ahead. He tapped the walls lightly with the back of his sword, then leaned in and listened like his life depended on it. He'll be left wondering what he was even doing until it's finally over. Heinz returned, straight up telling them not to stress, because the canal wasn't going to collapse. And the deeper they went, the messier it got, so yeah, they could totally get lost in there. While all that chaos unfolded, Heel couldn't believe it. Hines could read the whole thing just by listening. Rihanna told them they could mark their route as they go so they wouldn't get lost, and Fula was buzzing with excitement for what lay ahead. They pushed forward down the canal, and Heel's eyes widened when he realized there was. And somehow this was down here the whole time, like a secret left behind. He couldn't stop thinking, who built it and why. Rihanna told him it might have been humans, because you've seen signs of them before, backed by that statue of a woman in the library. Ashton said they might slip past Berlian's notice, but their descendants could already be living in some other land out there. Fula then said they might be digging in and living underground right here too, just like the underground people Roydon was talking about. They stopped mid-step, something caught their eye on the way. But when they rushed in to investigate, it was nothing but a pile of slimes. Heil said, leave the slimes alone, don't you dare mess with them, they're harmless. They finally uncovered the truth, slimes were lurking underground too. And he'll finally remember running into those shells and caves too. One more name snapped into his thoughts, Mappa, and he couldn't stop wondering what era that guy truly came from. Or maybe he'd know something about these ruins. Ahead, the canal split and spilled straight into another canal. They chased the water's echoes like it was a trail only they could hear, and then, just when you thought it couldn't get any crazier, they burst into a huge, open hallway that screamed, "This is the doorway to something massive." Hina said he hunted the trickle of water under it, and that sound was guiding him straight to the gate, so he pushed forward. And she'll spot it for sure, then start jumping around on her heels like she can't believe what she just saw. In the next second, the door slammed shut, and the moment froze along with the. They slipped through the entrance, then slammed it shut behind them and trapped themselves inside. And then Rihanna felt it, magic pulsing out of the walls like it was alive. Mysterious blocks suddenly burst out of the wall like something was breaking free. The walls split wide open, and out of nowhere, it transformed into a security drone, which felt like instant trouble for them as the glow started to spread. Those drone shot rays came screaming out of them. And right at the last second, he summons a shield to guard everyone, then snaps, "Watch out." And then it hit him, these drones weren't random at all, they were security guards. He hurled thunder magic at them and shattered everything, but then shock hit him, his magic got swallowed by the drone, and it blasted the same attack back at them. He got slammed back by the blast, and that's when he finally understood just how brutal those drones really were. Volus said they couldn't strike them like this. Then boom, one of the drones shot closer to her and ripped away the shield she'd been using. Then everything started spiraling downhill for them fast. Now Ashton made a bold move, trying to yank the drone's attention onto him. Ashton snapped that if they couldn't blast these drones with magic, they'd better slice them apart. Then he started hacking through the closest ones, cutting down a few right away. He braced to smash forward with his next attack, and you could feel just how ferocious Gale Ashton, the captain of the Imperial Guard of the Tibris tribe, really was. He sprinted forward and started blasting the drones out at that distance. Drones swung their sights at him, but he was an unstoppable blur, way too fast for them to ever land a shot. Ashton ripped through them in a blink of speed. In Rihanna, he was totally stunned by how fast everything was happening, like the crowd was roaring just for him. Now that Ashton smashed a bunch of drones, the rest started closing in around him, fast. Around, he shot a glance back and started heading straight toward Ashton. He told the Highness that he should go help Ashton too, but the Highness waved it off and told him to rest assured, because his brother Ashton could handle it all by himself for them. Ashton absolutely crushed it in the battles, way better than anyone expected. Then the drones surged in formation, firing heat rays that ricocheted off each other like a deadly dance. And he managed to slam Ashton with a hit, but it barely even fazed him, even as he was instantly boxed in by dozens of drones. Then Hines threw up cover for Ashton, proving their teamwork was sharper than any drone out there. And with perfectly timed coordination attacks, yeah, that was their real specialty. Ashton and Hine charged straight at the entire swarm of drones. Ashton ended them in a blink, one lightning-fast shadow slash that made it feel like he was everywhere at once. Every single drone wrapped up their job before Heal was even finished, and some of them barely even caught on in time. He told them the truth so they could finally heal and move on. Thanks to Ashton and Heinies, everyone finally walked away safe. Then Heal tore into the wrecked drones to see what the golems were made of, and there, packed inside, were heart stones. He figured, I can drain them dry, and then turn what's left into something brand new. He tracked down the exact materials to forge them, and right at the center was a magic-absorbing crystal. A floating stone let them soar through the sky, and black iron forged their bodies to shrug off brutal heat. Falash shoved the floating stone into place, and it actually worked. Then Hal cracked how those drones managed to move like that, and he walked away with a whole new lesson. After that, Ashton leaned in and told him the drones look like they're guarding something, so they had to go take a look, and Hyla nodded right away. Then the door in front of them swung open on its own, no smashing, no forcing, just instant access. Ashton suddenly felt it, something was inside that door this time. And after watching it closely, a golem burst out through the door, making everything for them feel even worse. The shocking arrival of a brand new opponent barely even surprised anyone, it felt like it was coming. He cracked it open and saw the heartstone glowing inside, so he knew this was just another doll. This golem looked absolutely unstoppable, like a twisted mix of a knight and a warhorse, and Ashton yelled at everyone, "Don't you dare look away." And the golem suddenly started, speaking some unknown language out of nowhere. Hill was stunned to hear it talk, but the words just wouldn't make sense to him. He wrestled with the idea, was there really such a thing as a talking golem, but Fula flat out said it was just nonsense. Rihanna said the golem's language could match the one in those books they'd found in the library earlier. He'll push forward and try to talk to the golem, testing if it can understand him, and he'll tell it he's from the surface above this land. The golem stared at him like the words never meant a thing. Then it yanked out its sword and unleashed a deadly spell that poured out of its arm. Rihanna and Fula stood frozen in shock, and Highness snapped, telling them to stay way back. Highness slammed into the golem's attack and heal. Still, he tried to make them understand one thing: he wasn't their enemy. The golem didn't just stop there, it kept stacking even more power into every single attack, and Hines finally saw the truth. Fighting it was unavoidable now. Ashton jumped into the brawl and ordered Hines to try to capture the golem without smashing it, if they could, and together they fought it head-on. But the golem was a monster too. It kept pace with both of them at the same time. Steel screamed as they collided, and every swing lit up the air. This clash didn't hold back, fighting tooth and nail against them. Ashton and Highness got driven back again and again, and they finally realized whatever was attacking them was seriously, dangerously good. Fuller jumped in, thinking he could help them out. She unleashed magic and slammed the spell into it. Then even when Ashton lunged to stop her, she still attacked. Then the golem thrust its left arm up. There, embedded in it, was the absorbing crystal. It swallowed her strike whole, and she snapped. Sorry for making it harder. Ashton figured that was exactly what was going on. Then the golem snapped its arm into a crossbow and loosed an arrow crackling with fire magic. The moment that bow went off, everyone snapped to attention, and he was on the move immediately. They instantly hurled a boulder right in front of them to block the arrows and keep them safe. He screamed for everyone to duck behind it, while the golem kept smashing into them nonstop. Then the golem surged forward, spear raised in its arm, and barreled straight at them. That power was brutal, so strong it could smash the boulder they were hiding behind. Good news, everyone snapped out of the way in time and just barely avoided getting hit. And when he finally gets a look at it, he realizes this isn't just another golem or doll, it's on a whole different level than anything they've faced before. Ashton realized they were way too green, thinking they could actually track it down. So he cranked it up and used its phantom dash, pure blur, slicing through the air like a gust of wind. But somehow Gola read his attack like it was a warning sign and saw through it just in time to get past Ashton, right too. Even at full speed, it crashed into Ashton. His sword snapped up just in time and blocked the strike. And when he saw the golem actually match his gale wind speed, shock punched through him. Just as he made it back, that golem came flying in and attacked both of them at once. So they could feel the tension building, like the next attack was coming for them before it even hit. It slammed into all of them with lightning speed. No one saw it coming, snaring Heel, Rihanna, and Fuller in the chaos. Ashton and Hines were getting shoved back again, and they had no way to stop it, not even a little. Heel suddenly snapped to an idea, and while Highness and Ashton were tearing into it, he cooked up a plan with Rihanna, convinced it might actually pull off. The second things started heating up, they kicked their plan into gear without wasting a second. Then he leaned in and asked Riel, who had been passed out in his bag this whole time, to unleash its clairvoyance and zero in on the water line. The moment he finally laid eyes on it, he smashed it to pieces with his ice axe. The moment the water line got obliterated, Ashton whips around and sees the damage closing in behind them. Before they even realized it, the whole area flooded fast. Water surged up to just above their feet, and he ordered Hines and Ashton to fall back to the walls, now. Then he, Rihanna, and Feely unleashed the freeze spell across the entire water-covered surface, all while hovering over the grove, powered by Terran spider webs. The golem leapt out of the water at the last second, twisting to dodge the freeze blast. And in the blink of an eye, the entire area became a sheet of ice. Turns out the heel was locking onto those hooves, driving them straight into the legs, which felt totally wrong for skating on ice. So Taran snapped a spider web onto its leg and yanked it down with full force. Ashton and Highness locked eyes. This was their moment to strike. They flanked the golem, striking from every side, leaping wall to wall like living shadows to tear it apart. They thought they'd finally nailed the golem, then it smashed straight onto the ground with its next move, shocking them all. To burst upward and flex its speed, the exact way Ashton and Hainas did. Everyone's jaw dropped because nobody saw that golem move like that coming. Ashton and Hines stood frozen dead center, totally speechless. Then, before anyone even caught on, the golem shoved itself between them and tore into them, whipping its arms around as it attacked. He slammed them into the side walls and sent them flying. Heel was blindsided too, and the tension in that highness was impossible to ignore. About how the Gola suddenly moved like it had unlocked some secret power. Then they froze, its legs had warped into sharp, pointy spikes. Then it locked onto Heel for its next brutal hit. Highness and Rihanna scrambled as fast as they could, but they still couldn't reach in time to save him. Heel knew there was no escaping it, so he squared up and braced himself to meet it head-on. Then a shell rolled up and stood right in front of him. He snapped at it to watch out, but Shell refused to move, guarding Heel with everything it had. But as soon as it caught sight of the shell, the golem snapped to a halt and yanked its attack back. They never saw it coming. Golem snapped his way back from the heel. More people rushed in to heal him fast, and they kept asking, "Are you okay?" But Ashton couldn't stop thinking, why did that golem suddenly cut off the attack? The golem just stood there, glaring at Shell as he watched Heel treat him like an old friend. The moment the golem opened its mouth and spoke again, you could tell instantly this voice sounded nothing like the one before. He'll stare at it in shock, wondering where that thing is even coming from. Then Highness leaned in and told him, it's coming from inside the golem. And then its belly mechanism yanked itself open like it was about to unleash the next move. But just when everyone thought it was over, a tiny girl burst out of the golem, eyes half closed as she rubbed them like she'd just woken up. They realized they weren't battling some mighty warrior at all. They'd been fighting a kid the whole time, the one actually puppeteering the golem. But then they watched in shock as the golem talked to her, and she answered back in a language that none of the healers could understand. Then she locked eyes on Heel, and even with her flaws, she still managed to speak his language. Phil leaned in and asked, "Can you really understand what we're saying?" The little girl shot back, "Fine, I'll learn your language by listening to you talk." They couldn't stop staring at this kid, because the brain on him was way too sharp to be real. They stared in shock as a kid burst out of a golem in the underground ruins, and somehow learned to talk to them that fast. She tried to head for Heel, but the ice betrayed her. She slipped and went down. He blurted, "Are you okay?" and she fired back a few words at the golem. And then it swung in to carry her, right as she spotted the hole in the canal and barked out a few desperate commands, which made the waters rush grind to a sudden halt for a moment. And on her next command, the sky erupts again with even more flying. Drones burst through the door straight ahead, raining danger on the spot. They were stuffed with ideas, and that's when it hit. They weren't just helpers, they were reinforcements. A tiny kid named the drones Argo and ordered them, no matter what, to never attack a soul. He'll realize it too, those names were theirs, and then the drones unleashed their own magic from within, sparking the repairs and stitching that broken canal back together. They finally grasped it. She really was calling the shots for the dolls. The kid snapped, asking what happened to the Argo. Then she realized, with a sinking gut, they'd wiped it out, and the damage was all on them. He'll rush to explain to her that he had no other option, and he'll just keep saying, "I'm sorry," like that's all he can do. After that, the kid finally listened, only to realize they were straight from the surface. And then he'll beg for forgiveness, apologizing to her for what he did to those ruins. But he had to find out why his father dumped him here, maybe even down in this place, and he cornered the kid, demanding every detail about these ruins. She finally clicked in, like it was the first time she'd ever heard it, realizing she'd been underground this whole time. Which totally caught Heel off guard. She finally realized, now that it was too late, that everything was already in ruins. It looked like she'd been out for ages. Now she couldn't remember a single thing about where she was. Heel could feel her memory might be messed up, so he pressed her. "Why are you guarding these ruins, and who are you really?" She said with steel in her voice that defending this land was her duty, and nothing would stop her. And she couldn't recall a single thing, just that. Meanwhile, Fuller was shaking from the cold, sneezed hard, muttered sorry, and then the cold here hit so hard she couldn't help it. He'll ask the kid if they can go somewhere else, and he'll agree on the spot. Then there's no hiding it. This whole mess is on them. Then the kid blurted, "Why did that Kavo, this slime shell, actually guard you from the Balshan strike?" Balshan, the golem, had already cornered Ashton and Hines earlier. He told her, "My name's Shell, she's my friend," and then bragged that Shell had saved him again and again. The kid actually listened, then nodded and ordered them to follow her. He's gonna grab the question and hit her with it, right there, asking what they should call her. She didn't seem to grasp it at all. Then he'll corner her later and demand what the Bolsheviks called her when they talked. Just like his name, Heel, and then he went on to introduce the others too. She knew that to them, that name wasn't just a label, it was a lifeline that kept them apart. So she leaned in and said, "Just call me Nane." Rihanna and Heel told her, "It was amazing finally meeting you." Nano then blurted out that he'd look like he had something totally weird, right down to his cave king crest. Then they bolted to the door up ahead, and the second they stepped inside, everything changed. More Argo units powered up, but Nane snapped out an order, "Don't you dare attack us." She promised them, "Don't worry, Argo won't lift a finger as long as I'm with you." Fuller pressed Nane about what language she spoke, but she couldn't even name it, she only knew it existed. And it turns out she hadn't talked to anyone, save for Balshian. Fula leaned in and asked if she was feeling lonely, and the girl shot back that there was no shortage of manpower, like she handled the whole thing with that cold, systematic way of thinking. Rihanna and Heel couldn't believe it. Nane was blazing through the Balian language, and it was honestly unreal. Fuller then pushed for taking Nane to the library, claiming she could read them. But Nane hit them with the truth, she couldn't leave this place. Fuller promised her a warm welcome, and if they could crack the secrets of Sheol, maybe she'd get her memory back too. But Nane said, even with her memories gone, she still had to protect this place with her life, because if she disappeared, the defenders and the golems would lose control, and that alone would spell disaster. Rihanna told everyone she'd haul some books with her next time. They finally stumbled onto a massive, mysterious door, and Nane warned them, right there, that the real main area was waiting on the other side. Highness then caught a sharp scent rolling toward him ahead. He couldn't wrap his head around it, it was underground, and somehow that just didn't make sense to Heel. Then Nane snapped her command, and the gate swung open. Right as the gate cracked open, a blinding burst of light tore out like it had been waiting to explode. Everyone's jaw dropped as the road ahead looked utterly unreal, like it didn't belong to this world at all. They couldn't shake the thought they were outside, because the whole place was drenched in greenery. And the river was alive with fish, swimming right through the place. Heel tilted his head back and stared at the ceiling, double-checking that they were truly trapped inside the ruins. And then boom, they realized a massive sunstone was right there. And then he heard Riel barking with pure joy as she spotted even more slimes piling up in the place. And yeah, golems were there too, for real, which somehow makes it even crazier, but it looks like they're assigned to guard the place and trim the leaves just right, so everything stays perfectly shaped and beautiful. Nane warned them, "Don't startle the Kavo." Heel leaned in and asked if she took care of the slimes too. She answered that guarding the Kavo was straight up part of her job. Then Heel snapped to attention and blurted, "Nane, who the heck put you on this job?" And she admitted it wasn't even clear to her, and honestly, trying to put it into words felt impossible, so she just started thinking. And basically told him, "Forget explaining, let me show you instead." She led them forward, and they couldn't stop adoring that gorgeous path ahead, like a living tunnel of trees closing in around them. She led them to the very spot where she'd woken up and been handed her duty. She leaned in and started spilling her whole story from the very beginning. She jolted awake in pitch-black darkness, couldn't make out a thing, and felt cramped from the very start. Right after that, she stepped into a brighter world. The very first thing she spotted was Balshan kneeling right beside her. And right then, the second thing she spotted was a statue of a woman. She dragged them straight to the statue, and the shock hit them instantly. They didn't expect that at all. To realize it was the same woman who had been in the library. He pressed Nane to explain who she was, yet she stared back like her memories had vanished completely. But the second she saw her, everything snapped into place. She heard her purpose loud and clear: protect her at any cost. Just one word, yet it hit her like a warning, and she instantly knew exactly what she had to guard. Sure, that stone statue couldn't talk, but somehow it still clung to her memory like a piece of the past she couldn't shake. Once she finally felt important, he couldn't help but feel sorry for her. And he told her straight to her face that she could still carry out her duty and protect everyone, even without her memories. But he told her, at the very least, you've got to get your memories back, every last bit of them. She kept staring at that statue like it might spill a secret, because whoever it was, it felt like she was way more important to Nane than she should have been. Everyone else lit up, thrilled to finally hear what Heel had to say to Nane. She turned him down, clueless about what he even expected from her, because her logic told her his whole argument had zero backbone, and when he heard that, he flinched, then scrambled to explain why feelings mattered. But he had zero clue how to pull it off, until Nane clocked it. She spun around and faced the statue, then stepped closer, and he hurried after her, firing off questions like, "What happened?" Nane admitted she barely even looked at the statue's details, because she had no clue what any of it meant. And when Heel finally saw what she meant, he froze, utterly shocked at everything he just realized. Nane leaned in and grilled him about that huge coincidence. Why was the symbol from the Cave King's crest showing up on that statue? So what was he really hiding?